welcome to another episode of Xbox Infinite. This is going to be a big one this week. There's a lot happening. There is a lot happening out there in the world, and we got some absolutely amazing guests for you this week, and it should be pretty hot topics, pretty hot conversations. Kay Asante, welcome back to the show. How you doing, man? How's your week been? What have you been up to?
Good evening, good day, good morning to all the people out there. I've been doing good, man. A lot of work, real life stuff, and Starfield. Basically, that's been my existence for the past 2 weeks. I'd say all is well. You know, I'm excited to get into it with y'all and find ladies and gentlemen on the panel. It's great. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Awesome, man. It's always good to have you here. Salty is gaming, first time on. We've got some interesting topics that we can definitely talk about this week with you, my friend. How's your week been? What have you been up to? What are you playing?
It's been good, man. It's good to be here for sure in the Lion's Den. Like I said, shout out to everybody in the chat for sure. Saw Thrifty, USO Vinny, what's going on? What have I been up to? I've been playing some Game Pass games with Starfield and Liza P. So I got the subscription because my buddy, he's a content creator, Zach. Shout out to him. He's probably not in the chat, but he's on Xbox only. He's, and he wanted to play GTA. Hold on, let me turn off the noise here. He wanted to play GTA, so the only way he could do that, they don't have crossplay, is if I got Game Pass. So, there I am. Let's go.
And you're back on Xbox. They all come back in.
That's right. I have almost 100,000 achievement score, not even chase score on Xbox. It's crazy. I'm like 96 or something like that. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if I get 100,000.
Chasing the score with that ABK deal you just made. Infinite Umbra, welcome. Welcome back to the show. How's your week been? What have you been up to? How was your show?
Oh, my show was pretty good. Yeah, good to be back. Yeah, we went over a bit again, though. A good 2, maybe 40. I'm not sure how long it was. It was pretty long. But it's funny because I really didn't feel like I got through everything. It was so much news to get through. But it was a good show, though. Had Shane raising up the game on cancer, cure for cancer campaign with the fix, of course. And, of course, we had Hargeet on with us as well. So that was pretty good. But, yeah, good to be here with you guys today. Thank you for the guests and such. And, yeah, ready to talk this news, man.
Absolutely. There's a lot.
It's a beautiful morning.
Yeah, mute.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
There you go.
Appreciate you. There you go.
Where is the mute button? I'm hovering. Jedi Knight, welcome back. How's your week been? I know you're having a bit of trouble with Starfield. Probably want to let the chat know about that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to know how much I want to go into it because I don't know how far everyone is. But one of the Powerful Beyond missions is a little bit bugged. I think it's been bugged after the update, and I cannot get to the place I need to. I don't even want to say where I'm going, but the place I need to get to on that planet. So it just happened before the show. Hopefully I can work it out. But yeah, crazy week this week. Tokyo Game Show, massive news dump by Microsoft. The CMA going through. So awesome to go check game with you guys. Welcome back, Kay. I'm compromising. Love hearing your takes, bro. And Saltiest Gaming, bro. Like, kudos to you for coming on the show, man. Jumping straight into the Lion's Den. Everyone in the chat, please be respectful.
For sure.
Absolutely. I don't think you could probably tell them to be respectful 100 times. I don't feel like that's going to happen today. But if you guys can, that would be nice. Blue, welcome back. How are you? Hey, whenever I say Blue, how are you? I feel like I should stop because I've nailed the rhyme. But I guess it's your time.
I mean, I feel like you should sing it. I mean, we got Umbra singing.
No.
Singing. No one wants to hear him sing.
I didn't get my baby come back though, so I'm a little sad. But hello chat, hello everyone, and big thanks to both of our guests for coming on tonight. It's good to get everyone's perspective and be nice about it. Everyone who's in the chat, and I'm sure Bobby Hawk is very happy tonight. He's not the only Sony fan in the crowd.
Yeah. If you don't know, Bobby Hawk's our resident pony. He hangs out in the chat and gives the hot takes.
He is the politest little pony you've ever met. He's so nice.
Nice.
We love it.
He's a brother of X Hawk. Are they brothers? They have Hawk at the end of the name.
No. No, I love
I'm sure
Hawk
he'll
in
let
your
us know.
show, though. He keeps you guys honest. I like that.
It's true. It's true.
So, Blue, what are you playing? How's Starfield going for you? I know you got a few games on the go, right?
Yeah, still working on Starfield and getting my ass handed to me 12 different, 100 different ways by Peter, who just becomes a massive savage in party animals. It's ridiculous. And then I still play my Fallout 76 every day. Don't at me if you don't like the game, because I don't care. I put a couple of things up on Twitter this week, and people were just like angry at me. And I'm like, bro, I didn't ask for your opinion. It was my opinion. You're welcome to read it or move on, but I don't need to hear the hate. So it's a really good game now, but it was really, really horrible when it came out and for many, many years. So I'm just trying to give a little love now when it actually earned it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is one thing about Bethesda is they do support games for years and years and years, like they were with Starfield, generation game. Look, we're going to jump into the topics. The first one off the rung this week has got to be the CMA approving, preliminary approval for Microsoft's and ABK's deal. They released a press statement earlier yesterday. Well, for us earlier yesterday, maybe it was morning for you. I don't know when it was for you guys, but the CMA considers that the restructured deal makes important changes that substantially address the concerns it set out in relation to the original transaction earlier this year. They've preliminarily approved it. I think they've got the I can't remember what you call it. They're open for submissions from the public and from companies up until the 6th, and the final approval will go through on the 18th. So I did put a tweet out earlier in the week that Call of Duty is coming home on the 6th. But it's the 18th, whatever. You get some dates wrong. Shit happens. Look, I did watch a lot of this, the rhetoric going on from the CMA after their announcement. Seems like they're touting this as a win and basically, lapping, saying they've regulated big bad Microsoft and they won and no one else was able to do this. All the other regulators. It's just show of force, and it's absolutely ridiculous. What actually happens now that Ubisoft has got those streaming rights is that cost will be passed on to the consumer. So it's actually worse for the consumer, in my opinion. But I don't want to take up too much airtime on this because it's a very interesting topic. I'm going to kick it to Kay. Kay, what are your thoughts on the CMA preliminarily approving the deal? Do you think this is worse we had a big, long discussion about this, whether it's really bad for us as Xbox gamers. But I guess there's sort of no doubt that there's going to be added costs passed on because it's costing Microsoft to license these deals to Ubisoft. They're losing money. That cost is going to be passed on to us in some way. Or do you not think so?
As far as the cost that'll be passed on, I'm waiting to see on that. I want to see exactly how they thread that needle. Could it be that's the reason why certain subscriptions services have been increased? Who knows, right? It all kind of happened in a very interesting time frame. So, we'll see what more added costs that they can muster and get out of themselves and how they justify it, right? But as far as the CMA in general and them approving it, like I'm sorry, like this was an open and shut case from day one. Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether it's exciting to you or not exciting to you, that's not really the case here. There's precedent for big companies buying other big companies, especially in this exact kind of merger fashion. So the reason why it galvanized a lot of people, I won't speak for a lot of people, but the reason why it was fascinating to people in my bubble is that, it almost seemed like it may or may not have gone through, which, if that actually was the case and it didn't go through, that would set a very dangerous precedent to say that, you, a person with your own money, can't buy or decide what to do with it. It was a very dangerous precedent to set. And so for us, it was a foregone conclusion. As far as ABK proper, does it really excite me? Unless Microsoft turns around and goes, oh, by the way, we have Rock Band and Guitar Hero now. I'm like, it is what it is. That's what would be exciting to me.
I would absolutely love those to be added.
Oh yeah. Then you got me. Then I'm there day one. Let's go. I still got my plastic guitars in the garage. Let's go. Right. But otherwise, it will broaden their capabilities. It will give them support studios that they very woefully need in certain extents. They've been able to thread some good needles and get some really good games out. Now with these guys, they might be able to do more of that in a consistent fashion. So hey, I think it's a good deal. I think it's interesting. I think it's it's now all about what happens now once the ink is dry. But the news specifically that the preliminary deal is approved, it's like how many victory laps are people going to take? You know what I mean? This has been a foregone conclusion for some time now, and every time it gets closer, every time to take a baseball analogy, every time it rounds the second base, people go, "Oh, it's done." Now it's rounding third base. Oh, it's already over. Every time a foot gets closer to home base, they're still talking. So it is interesting. It is news, but wake me up when it's actually done, because there's another news there too, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think everyone's pretty tired of, on both sides of the fences, and even in the middle, probably even Xbox and the CMA, and everyone's pretty tired of having to deal with this, and I think they want to move on with their lives and get back to what the business is all about, which is putting out great games. Salty, we haven't got your take on this. Well, I actually do know a little bit of sort of how you feel about the deal, because I lurk in your chat often.
For sure.
I just want to let the audience, I want the audience to hear what are your thoughts around the CMA finally approving the deal? Do you think that this is a massive win for Xbox? Do you think it's something they needed or didn't need? What could they have done better or differently?
Well, first of all, it feels like it's been 10 years. I don't know about you guys, but like from start to finish from this whole process, it's just been crazy long amount of time. It's been a year plus. I don't know what the exact number is there, but I think if you'd ask the general gamer that is in this community if they would just want it to be over with, I think that they would tell you that that's the correct answer. Whether or not the CMA was right, and what their main argument, I guess, was the monopolization of like cloud streaming, and then that's going to be done through Ubisoft now. Like, is that a huge concession for Microsoft? Is it going to be a huge expense for them? No, I'm not in the long run, because if you look at it, it's just the amount of assets they acquired, and that they, that's a huge market for them. So it's like they couldn't just say, because I know there's a lot of people out there that said, well, we could just do it without the UK. It's like, that's not really how they wanted to do it. So I think it's a W for Microsoft on that end, because they found a way to get through the main stumbling block. Like, they found a way to solve that problem. If they didn't, then they'd still be having an issue with the CMA. But obviously, since they provided a response and it was acceptable by the CMA, then you move forward. As far as the whole process and like the Activision deal in general, I still put my stance at that being able to acquire everything or having unlimited funds doesn't necessarily provide the best business practice or results-based businesses. If you look at like sports, I talk about this, right? Shout out to Mooch with the sports reference, but there's a lot of teams that have a lot of funds, but they suck. It's like the New York Knicks, for example. They have a lot of funds, but their owner's just garbage. So it doesn't matter how much they throw out in terms of money. If you aren't the best at the top, then you're never going to see those results. You saw that with the Suns, who are my favorite team. They had a bad owner and they had bad leadership. So then it never led to wins. So that's the thing that I worry about is it's like so you needed to acquire Bethesda, but you need then also to acquire Activision, which is at the time, no one thought that was even a possibility. So why is there a disconnect in like homegrown stuff? Like, why aren't the studios that we have enough? Or do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, look, I mean, we sort of back and forth on this sort of on your show while I was in the chat.
For sure,
and I would say that there is definitely, or there has been in the past, issues with management sorting out pipelines. But I would also add that since 2018, they've been on an acquisition spree. And they've been just sort of rounding up studios, absolutely. And that's something that's hard to manage, even for good managers, when you've basically bringing in an entirely new team. I mean, if you want to go to the point reference, I don't really know a whole lot about basketball, but I'll just say you start. Well, let's say baseball. You start with a catcher, or you start with a pitcher, and that's all you have, and then you bring in the rest of the team. That's got to be hard to manage. You've got a lot of personalities, a lot of nuance there, and obviously there's you cannot say they haven't dropped the ball a couple of times. They definitely have, but however, I don't think that will be what happens going forward, especially with some of these leaks that we've seen from behind the scenes and the way that Spencer's sort of handling the team. I don't have that Phil Spencer button. I wish I did, but
how could you, bro? What?
I actually follow the guy that did that meme, so it's.
Oh yeah,
funny.
I know him. I know him pretty well, Ginge.
Yeah, so he hit me. He hit me up, and he's like, "No hard feelings." I was like, honestly, like if you become a meme, that is like, I don't know, it's free publicity. People know who you are, like for the good or the bad. I mean, it's not, and people are trying to make it personal and stuff. It's just jokes, man. So yeah, I follow that guy, the Phil Spencer. So yeah, he's awesome.
It was funny. I can't say every time you guys do it, it does make me giggle.
Yeah.
Umbra, how are you feeling about this the CMA deal finally going through? I know we're all fatigued on this, so I don't want to stick on it too long, but how are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I mean, we all knew it was going to happen anyway, at least anybody with a brain. It was a foregone conclusion, and provisionally, I think it just feels like the CMA just delayed as long as they could to try to deny it, but they didn't really have anything to stand on. Nor did the detractors who claimed it, cried on Twitter like we knew about. But it is what it is. I mean, I think to even go to the link they had to go to try to sell off, at least put it off with Ubisoft, I think it's just an extra step that was unnecessary. I think everybody else, including the outside of the FTC and CMA, what was I can't remember right now, and excuse me guys because my brain is still activating as I'm waking up. It was the I'm trying to fumble around to the words. What were the other European part of the
EC and the EC.
EC. Yeah, them they also approved it without having that extra step. So I just think it's unnecessary. And I think they were just trying to like stall and create problems where there were none. So I'm just happy that it's over with. It does feel like it's been a really long time. So just happy that it's over, really.
I think it's like for the CMA, it's them having a show of force. And I don't know if you guys in the chat, you guys on the panel, I don't know, you do know Luke Steele. I've spoken to him in the background ad nauseum about this. In fact, we go back and forth about it every time something happens. I haven't hit him up this time, but I will. But for me, it's been them having a show of force. He disagrees with this, but they've never had a deal in their lap this big, and they've never had such an opportunity to sort of show their quality as a regulator. And I think that's basically what this is. This from the CMA has been chest beating from day one. And they got what they wanted.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to add, Riskit, is Sarah Cardell, who has been against this deal from the start, the CEO of the CMA, said the CMA's position this is a quote from her, the CMA's position has been consistent throughout. This merger could only go through if competition, innovation, and choice in cloud gaming was preserved. That is a joke of a quote. The cloud gaming notion and competition wasn't brought up till the 11th hour. Microsoft had no ability to push back against that narrative because it was first about, Call of Duty and taking away that from Sony, and then they came up with, something else to fight against it. And so Microsoft, I think, have been incredibly diligent in working through whatever process that these authorities have wanted them to work through, and I think the CMA has been underhanded, and it just shows that it looks from the outside to me that there's been a bias against this deal and against Microsoft from the start. But in saying all that, I'm not sure. I think Kay, you said it at the start. It feels like we've been going over this for 5 years now. I'm glad it's finally over. It's a little bit, of a circle jerk now, the way they're doing it, including Ubisoft, who's now going to be able to, deliver those cloud games to anybody. But one question I did have is, can Sony now have access to all Activision games through the cloud if you say put a VPN and say you're coming from the UK. Now I know that won't work very well in terms of latency, but I would have thought that there'd still be a possibility there now.
I know my PS Plus
wasn't that in the leaks at one point? Phil Spencer was asking about that, the cloud access through PlayStation. I don't know. I thought it was in the leaks.
Yeah, it came out. It was in an email where they were looking at the possibility of if you could get to Game Pass through a browser, right?
Yeah.
I was very close in my attempt. I've been very close in getting to Game Pass in the PlayStation browser. They've done a good job in hiding it. I was very close. I've actually also gotten very close to getting Game Pass running on the Nintendo Switch browser as well. But yes, they hide it very well, so it's difficult to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think the only way that you could get to it, unless someone's who could find it through could find it through
the knowledge. So he says the deal with Ubisoft is global. Don't need a VPN.
Global, yeah.
Yeah, it is global. That's
the thing that I have to point out.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I have to point out is I feel like, from an outside perspective looking in, I'm not a lawyer or any of these politicians, but the two main entities that had arguments about against Xbox and this acquisition, I feel they both failed to present really good arguments. The FTC was the worst, what they were. It was like contradictions. There's a lot of people in that space that doesn't know gaming or don't care. And then the arguments that were presented were it was garbage. And I don't know if it was Khan that was responsible for all that argument or the CMA. I just feel like better, arguments could have been made, but that's just me.
Yeah, but it's
on that. I agree. Yes.
It's hard to argue when the facts are on the other person's side, though. So I can also understand it from that point of view.
Agreed. Like, what did they have to argue? We don't like it because it's Microsoft. Like, that's all they had to argue.
But that's the point, right? And Saucy said it exactly right? They don't like it, so they came up with arguments to try and justify them not liking it, and their justifications weren't sound, right? I've heard sounder arguments against it on Twitter that I have heard from any of the regulators.
Yeah. And, that's true.
It's just is what it is. That's what surprised most of us, right? Like, many of us could give two craps about this thing, but the fact that this thing that has really no arguments that have been really put forth that really make any real sense is still taking this long is what's so damn surprising, right? But I will say, Microsoft called it all along. They put their finger in the air and they picked it, and they were off by 2 months. They were exactly right as to when it would close.
So one of the things that I'd like to say is, through this process, I think giving and taking were on both sides. I mean, from the PlayStation perspective and the Xbox perspective, I think they both had to have concessions, because from what was originally offered, what was it, 3 years from Phil Spencer to PlayStation, and then what's actually now happening, what would have happened if there was no resistance is my question. What would this deal have looked like? Because essentially the way it went down is Microsoft had to put all their stuff on the table, right? They had to say pretty much a lot of the stuff that was behind the curtains, and then they had to put themselves on the third spot and say, hey, this is where we're at. We're here, we're there. And then with the deals they had to cut with different entities, and then the actual statements that they made in terms of multi-plat versus exclusive. Are you guys cool with that? The way that went down, concession wise, does it even have weight for this acquisition? Because how much is going to actually stay exclusive to the platform? Because if you look at Bethesda, Starfield was that nugget, but that was first acquisition. I don't necessarily think Starfield would have been exclusive if it was an Activision side.
I don't need games to be exclusive. This is going to sound very arsehole-ish, but it's not the way it sounds. I don't need games to be exclusive for me to enjoy them. And in fact, I've said many, many times, and I 110% believe this, and I think if you don't, there's only one argument to be made against this statement, which is that exclusives are only good for platform holders. They're not good for consumers in no way. The only way that you could make an argument against that is that then that developer only has to develop for one SKU. Other than that, exclusives are not good for consumers in any way, shape, or form. They force you into specific platforms that you may not want to be on. I don't particularly want to play on PlayStation, but if I want to play Spider-Man, that's where I got to go to play it. So, I mean, if you love Gears of War and you want to play Gears of War, you've got to go to Xbox to play it. So I've always said that. It was refreshing to hear Satya and Nadella say that as well. So, I mean, the way it fell, absolutely not. In regards to Phil Spencer's positioning themselves in third, he's just stating the facts. They did lose, thanks to Dick Matrick. They did lose the worst generation to lose, the generation where we went digital, like properly went digital. Our libraries went digital. The developments of ecosystems were more thorough. PlayStation really got its shit in line when it came to party chat. Still not great, but they got their shit in line with it and all that, those sorts of features. It was the worst generation to lose. And he's exactly right. Releasing one game is not going to remove the damage that one generation did. It's just not possible. But what they're doing, I mean, when you talk about whether they're going exclusive or they're not going exclusive, what they have is something that disrupts the market. It really does disrupt the market. There's so much discourse and back and forth about this. This is Game Pass. It's disrupting the market. You can tell by the fans on your side that don't like it, that because it disrupts their market. They don't want to see that. And I there's always pushback when there's hefty change.
Fair enough, but wasn't Starfield a feather in the cap as an exclusive for consoles, or why did they do that based on the logic?
100%. But Starfield's also a single player game. They're very different entities.
But the idea of an exclusive and the draw to that is to sell consoles, because
Absolutely, not.
I mean, essentially, that's all it's for. That's all it's
There's
for.
no doubt about that, Salty. But on the flip side, like you asked if I'm happy with the caveats they made to the deal. Yes, absolutely. But when I first heard about them transferring over cloud, to somebody else, so someone can do whatever they want with those games, I was hesitant, and I would have thought that Microsoft would push back against that heavily, because I thought the play was Game Pass. But hearing Satya on the stand, hearing Phil Spencer on the stand, I really do believe this now. They want all these games to be played by as many people as possible. There is no doubt that having exclusive helps sell consoles, but you're still getting quite a hefty share if you're selling games to other platforms. And I really do believe that Microsoft want more of an open marketplace.
Xbox isn't doing this for console sales specifically, though. They're doing it for ecosystem. That's the difference.
That's what I was going to say.
It's PC, it's console, it's the TV app in the Samsung TVs, and coming to all types of TVs, right? Through some dongle or small box or whatever the case may be coming up. So they're not necessarily focused on console numbers, right? Obviously those are great, but they're going bigger, right? Your phone even, right? So the Rogue Ally, things like that.
By the way, the reason why they're not as focused on the phone, on the console is because until they revise the console over and over and over again, they're still selling it at a loss, right? And that's the business. It's just the business, so nobody cares. It just is what it is, unless you're Sony, unless you're Nintendo selling Abacus, but that's a whole different thing, right? You sell it at a loss, you get it on the games. That has always been what it is.
But Sony reported that they're making profits on year 2.
But who pays for that?
But that's because.
But then they also up the price of the console after that too.
Exactly. Yes. Except the difference in Microsoft is they don't have to have that as a situation anymore, because as Blue has pointed out, you can play it on the phone. You can, as you've heard, the biggest growth sector for Xbox is PC, right? Like they're trying to change your mind. When you say Xbox, you're talking like Netflix. Where is Netflix on? It's anywhere you can install it. That is what the goal is. So will they look at the console market as part of it? Yes, they will, because they're making it. And they always want that to be part of the equation as well. But while they're in the environment where even to this very day, a Series X CPU is more expensive than the whole Series S itself, they don't mind you playing on your own hardware, because then they didn't take a loss for you to get into their ecosystem.
I 100% agree with what you're saying, all you guys, about Xbox, but I think that one of the arguments that could be made here is I don't know how you guys game, and it doesn't really matter, but I'm a console gamer, and that in itself that's like a dying breed in gaming, because it's not the majority. The majority is PC, mobile, and then you got the console gamers. So that's why on both sides, I'm like, well, what's justifying a purchase of a console? And it's like, at a certain point with what you guys are saying, it's fine, whatever you want to, where you want to game and game anywhere. Eventually Xbox wanted to have it on PlayStation. But if you're a console gamer, you don't want that to just not be a priority, right? I don't want just be like, well,
but
the console is a
question
second
to you,
thought,
though.
you know? Yeah.
But here's my question to you. I assume you're a console gamer because of its convenience, right? That's why people game on console. But that convenience won't change, right? That convenience will always be there. You ask, what is your reason for buying a console? If Netflix is everywhere and you still watch Netflix on your TV, just because it's everywhere doesn't mean it's any less good on your TV.
That's right.
They'll let you still let you still access it the way you want to, exactly the way you want to, right? So it doesn't change or dilute your brand at all.
So
that I agree with you.
I agree.
Sorry to say this. I'll add too. By the way,
I
hear you when you say that gaming, it feels like it's dying, like the last of a dying breed. I disagree.
The console gamers specifically,
yeah.
I mean, PC has always been bigger, right? And it's been getting bigger and bigger over time. So I do hear why that you might feel that way. But like, we look at the gaming and industry is bigger than it's ever been as far as things go, because it makes more now than the music and movie industries combined. I don't think that happens just with PC. It's a matter of console gamers too still. And I think most there are some who will go for that PC experience, but there are some who don't care to do all that. They don't care to work with all those components and trying to get drivers and install. Like, I'm having trouble with my ROG Ally.
Somebody talks about PC, they got to bring up drivers.
Damn drivers, man. Always got to install these drivers.
Blue screen.
You've seen me complaining in chats about how the ROG Ally have to do this and that. I'm like, wait a minute, man.
Sometimes, sir, the issue is between the keyboard and the seat. I'm sorry.
Y'all see, you trying to blame the user. You see this? Now I don't have to worry about that on Xbox or PlayStation. I just put the game on and keep moving.
That's right. Convenience.
So,
that's what it is.
That's right. As long as we got people who want convenience more, I don't think console gaming is going anywhere.
So one of the things that I like to say about the console gaming and why it is important to prioritize one console, one close platform from the first party perspective is optimization and graphics. That's been shown and proven. If you're multi-plat and you're going for PC and all these other specs, it's the optimization process is a lot difficult. So when you're not prioritizing that console space in the first party, you're not going to be getting those graphical showpieces, because Starfield is not at that level.
I will disagree with you on that.
I
would disagree with you on that, because you're judging it based on status quo, and status quo is PlayStation's the market leader and they are mostly console. So
I'm talking about from a first party perspective. So I'm saying,
I get that.
A graphics to graphics comparison from a first party perspective.
Well, but
who's putting out those graphical
Starfield.
Showpiece, right?
You compared Starfield. Starfield started as a third party game. If you're talking first party, compare, let's say, the next Motorsport. No.
So Halo Infinite.
Compare Motorsport. I wouldn't compare Halo Infinite, because Halo Infinite was also multi-generational. It was on Xbox One.
It's proving my point that if it is going to PC and you're spreading yourself thin from an optimization standpoint, that's the whole point. If PlayStation is developing for first party only, and then it ports to PC. That's why you're getting graphics on par with Spider-Man.
So what is let me jump in on that. So Halo was developed for an Xbox One VCR.
Exactly.
That's a different conversation.
That was a reference design, right? They started there and went up. What you're describing is when they start only at the top and stay there. That's great, right? Because you can make, if your reference design is the top of the line, then you focus on that. All I'm saying is, in the first party, in the argument you're making, I see why you can make that argument, but because of technical context, it's not quite that simple, right? Starfield, for example, if that started first party, like if Bethesda was part of Microsoft when Todd Howard went, I think it's time for Starfield, Series S would have been 60 frames. It's the fact that he started third party that made it 30 frames where we are today, right? The context in that middle matters. And because of that, the outcome doesn't necessarily make 1 + 1 = 2 there. The context sometimes shifts things.
Great point.
Yeah, for sure.
I hope
for
you understand
sure.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely. We've definitely had this go, and that sort of leads into our Series S thing. We're obviously moving on from the CMA, and we have moved into the sort of Series S console sort of thing. But before we do properly get into it, guys, if you are new here, please subscribe. We go live 8 p.m. every Friday EST. If you're in Australia, it's 10 a.m. in the East and 8 a.m. in the West. Look, this sort of leads into the leaks and the refresh and the updates and everything that sort of came out. Unbelievable that Microsoft leaked their own shit. That's just nuts to me. And it feels like, and I do want to come back to this conversation of console v console, and we'll get there. But this feels like to me, just the more I look at this,
Come on, risk it. You know what we were gonna say, right?
Yeah.
No, you know what we're gonna say, right? This is serious, like defeat from the jaws of victory energy right now. Nobody asked you to do it. You just kind of did it yourself, ridiculousness,
Yeah, but then the more I look at this, the more I see the information doesn't in any way hurt Xbox. In fact, in many ways, it's positive for Xbox. And so I struggle to see how a $1 trillion company could accidentally upload all of. I just don't. I feel like this, and this is tinfoil hattery. All right, so this is not me saying this is for sure, but the more I look at it, the more I think, was this an accident, or did they do this on purpose? Was this to show, the consumers like, hey, we're probably going to get ABK. This is what we got coming. We got a lot of stuff down the road we haven't even announced. I don't know, man. This seems like a complete positive. Kay, what do you think? You think I'm just got that Everborn Saga hat on and I'm getting a little bit tinfoily here, or you think this might be a possibility?
So first and foremost, did you just teabag that alien flower after you beat him? I'm looking on the screen.
I was the only
right
one
now.
that saw that. I thought I was the only one that
damn,
peeped
son. Like, what are we doing right now?
Are you
it.
gonna show it?
Flower, that
You gotta show
sunflower
him his
alien didn't deserve all that. Right.
You showed that sunflower whose business. All right. Anyway, forgive me. I just saw that. Couldn't look away. Anyway, so to your tinfoil hat theory, like I can see both sides of it. Right. First off, same thing I thought. As soon as it came out, we're starting to dig through it. You know what we do. We started to dig through the details and all that. And more, you find out that you really can't find anything that can be used against them in those details. Yeah, there are some embarrassing things in between there. Some emails that probably should have been left better unsaid, things like that, right? Stuff like that is what makes me think that maybe it wasn't expressly given out, because there are some embarrassing things. It doesn't really matter in the long run, but there are some embarrassing things in those exchanges. You don't want Nintendo, who you have such a great relationship with, to hear you talk about them like a chip that people are trading back and forth, whether it's real or not. And of course, if you read the context, he was saying that it was not something that they could achieve, but it would be great if they could, all that. But still, you don't want them to hear you talking about them like that, as if it's a bargaining chip or whatever. So on that, it makes me go, how could they have like specifically released that stuff like on purpose? But no, I feel you on the idea that they could have done this to be like, hey, look what we got coming, right? Because really, if you dig through it without the embarrassing emails here and there, it's just kind of galvanizing the community, telling you, hey, it may not be everything you think is happening, but look at all the stuff that's happening, and it's actually very positive. You know what I mean? The only place I can see, and I'm a technology guy, I'm an infrastructure guy, so I love the speeds and feeds. The only place I could see where it could be a bit detrimental for them is they've not only given their roadmap, their actual strategy for the next, like, to 2030, if you will. They've also even gotten a little bit into detail with some of the hardware they're choosing to use. And in a market where you are still competing with a competitor that is Sony, that may be like a bad move. But even in that instance, if we put that tinfoil hat back on, it could be, well, this was plan B, C, D, E, and F, So we're just throwing it out there to throw some chum in the water, and then we'll swerve them. You don't know that, so we'll see. But then again, even in that respect, when you're looking at the hardware, they are so close aligned, and they're all coming from exactly the same manufacturing house. How different could you really be, right? There's not that many different options in the price point that you're trying to aim at to really differentiate yourself. So I don't really think that it's necessarily the most detrimental thing. It's just kind of wild. Yeah, like the whole leak thing is just kind of wild. I say it a lot, and it continues to be true. Microsoft is good at defeat from the jaws of victory, and I think this is like completely in that vein as well.
Oh yeah, they love it. Blue, I want to go to you and sort of get your opinion on. Do you feel like this? To me, I agree with Kay there. Like, you may have handed out, some of the hardware specs and what you're looking towards and striving towards, but Sony can't really. They can't pivot heavily to combat that. They would be too far into development cycles when it comes to hardware. You're talking, decades, 5 years, 6 years, decades of hardware development. They already know where they're going 10 years before they go there when it comes to hardware. So do you feel like Microsoft might have thrown a bit of chum in the water, as Kay's saying, or do you feel like it's just an out-and-out fuck-up, another Redfall?
I think it's a mistake, but I don't. I mean, honestly, I could be underblowing this, but I think most of it's a nothing burger, really. We all know that they developed for hardware for years and years and years and years before. And what was on there, that was most of that stuff that leaked. Some of it was 2022, but a lot of it was 2020. And as we've seen through even just watching the court case, right, and listening to the testimony, what came out in conversation or in testimony, they've said, well, that was our thought then, but this isn't our thought now. And I mean, that goes with any company, anybody's personal life, right? Like, you think you're going to be able to do something in the next 2 years, and it's just not, right, for various reasons. So while I don't think they did this on purpose, I think the parts that are bummers to them are the fact that, that games list got leaked. I don't think the hardware stuff was really that detrimental. Maybe the controller might have been something that was a little, off the cuff that they would have preferred people not know. Although they did that survey, a couple of years ago about haptic feedback in controllers. So anybody could rationally infer that that's coming. But the rest of it, not that bad. And the Nintendo thing, personally, to me, like, we all have goals in our career, right? And Nintendo is like the be all end all of gaming, essentially, right? Like, they are the white whale. So of course it's like, you could say, man, in my career, if I got Nintendo, that would be amazing. But I don't think it was a goal that was ever like, this is our plan and we're going to do this. And then it just failed. I think it's if there was ever like a pie in the sky idea, this is what it is.
If that was ever the big whale out there, if he was chasing Moby Dick, that would be it. But even beyond that, so what if it was, right? What are they going to do? Cry? Like, they know better than that anyway, because even the most Xbot would know that they couldn't do that, because it would be a horizontal acquisition, as much as we've learned over time with this acquisition business.
Actually,
that before there is literally a price on everything, right? So it's not like Nintendo is not purchasable. There is a price. It's probably a price nobody would ever want to pay.
It's not a matter of exactly. It's not a matter of them. It's the regulation.
Hold on. One thing, real quick, right? And I know it's not real, but just think about it this way, right? We as gamers know that Nintendo is part of this gaming industry. We know that they're competitive, right? But what happened when they went and tried to compete?
Yeah.
What happened when they went and tried to do this? They were like, hell no, these guys ain't part of you guys. They aren't even the same. They made the 9th gen console. They don't even want to call it the 9th gen. They can use their own words against them. Nintendo can now be on the chopping block because, hello, y'all said they're not part of our merger. So that means it's no longer a horizontal merger by your own admission, regulators.
They could try that. I almost said Herky. They could try that, Kay, but that's not going to fly. They could
Hey,
try that
man.
instead of blue in the
And
face. So
honestly,
they'll get like Nintendo laughed them out of the building when they came at them before. The regulators will laugh Microsoft out of the building if they came with them.
and
with that.
honestly,
Agreed.
I don't know any rational gamer doesn't want Nintendo to be purchased by anyone else. Like Nintendo
Yeah, no.
on its own is a great thing, right? It's just I don't think it's a good idea for anybody to try to acquire Nintendo.
All right, well, let me go. I got a question
On
for
that, I
Salty
think we
then.
agree.
Let me just, I mean, I agree. I'd agree with that. But Salty, I got something for you. So say PlayStation walks in the building with Nintendo, they start colluding. PlayStation actually has the money to purchase Nintendo. Nintendo goes, yeah, fuck it, buy us. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to be against it?
No, so I'm right there with Blue. I don't think it would be good because competition is good for the industry. And honestly, like Nintendo, what they bring to the table, I've said this a lot of times. They walk by their own line. They don't really. They're a gaming, like they're part of the big three, but the way that they do business is so different. It's just it can't be lumped up with the other two. Like the other two are like, mano y mano, but Nintendo just does its own thing. Hey, we're gonna come out with this hybrid. Hey, we're gonna, we're still gonna be at 720p. They don't care. They don't. We're gonna do our own thing. We got Mario. We got our first party attachment rate is unheard of. So what would it benefit me as a gamer to get Nintendo on the PlayStation platform? Because Nintendo's doing other things that PlayStation isn't doing. That's why I bought them as a gaming choice, because I have this Switch that PlayStation doesn't have, this style of games. I've already said, because I started on Nintendo. That was Atari, Nintendo Up, Xbox, and then PlayStation. Nintendo has always been that thing for me, but lately I haven't been buying a lot of games on that platform. But it doesn't still say that platform isn't great, but it doesn't even feel like they're in the same boat. So that from that perspective, does Nintendo even care that the Xbox, or Phil Spencer said this about them? I really don't even think it bothers them that much, because any kind of deal that they cut with Call of Duty and all this other stuff was just kind of, I don't even think that they cared about that. I think it was just like, hey, yeah, Phil Spencer, we like you. We'll cut this deal for you, because it's just third parties not that important to them. First parties have always been the importance. I don't know. That's been a long time thing, all the way back. I don't know, whatever Nintendo console you want to say that had actual third party support. But as we see with Mortal Kombat 1, the travesty that is that, it's crazy.
Yeah, right.
So it's like third party. Do you want to play third party on Nintendo? I don't think that's what people's there for.
Just to say though,
and Calorie just pointed out in the chat as well, as regulators can't stop it because they fought so hard that the Switch isn't even in the same market. And this is very tinfoil hat stuff, like you said at the start, Risk. But at the end of the day, they can actually use the FTC's words against them, saying that Nintendo isn't in the same market if they wanted to go down that route. Now,
that's what Kay was saying. That's what Kay was arguing, Pete.
Yeah.
But the thing is, only the FTC argued that. That CMA didn't argue that. EC didn't argue that. You see what I mean? That it stops only at the FTC.
So the question I have for you guys, so Phil brought this up, whatever way you want to take it, a notch in his belt or whatever, how would that benefit Xbox beyond Game Pass to have Nintendo under the umbrella if that was to happen?
That's what I was going to address when you said that. Like, what do you get if you're a PlayStation gamer? Well, let's say you're an Xbox gamer. If I am a platform specific guy, and I get all those good games coming add to the good games I got coming, that's a W. There is no two ways about it. So if I got the excellent Nintendo games coming to the excellent PlayStation games, or if I have the excellent Nintendo games coming to the Xbox platform with excellent games, how can I complain as a gamer? That is there's nothing to complain about. It's a win.
I will add to that on that for you, right? When I watch a bunch of Nintendo Directs, right, I see a bunch of games coming to Game Pass, because 80% of the Nintendo Direct games come to Game Pass. They just do, right? Most people don't want to equate that, but it's true. 80% of them. I'll say 80 because it's sprinkled in with first parties as well. The one thing, and I too agree, I think we're all in vigorous agreement here that Nintendo should stay independent, but the one thing that would make me happy to see would be the wizards that are Nintendo that turn potatoes into magic with that piece of crap hardware, be given better hardware.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
They are absolute wizards. They turn dust to gold every time with that thing. And they're using like paper clips. Give them better hardware and you'll see them do even better things. Now, of course,
that leads
there
into
is an
another
argument
point,
to
though,
be
doesn't
made.
it? You get gameplay is king, isn't it?
Well,
and that's where they turn
yes,
dust into
yes.
magic, because it definitely ain't graphical
Yes.
fidelity, right?
Sure. Well, but you know what? And I was arguing with I was having a conversation with Everborn about this exact very topic. And he was thinking that, hey, you know what? Maybe Nintendo doesn't think, while others think too much about graphics, Nintendo doesn't. I would argue they think more about graphics than anyone else does, because they have to spend a lot of time covering up a lot of the bad stuff that they can't get away with because of their Switch, right?
That's a good
point. I will tell you that Tears of the Kingdom looks great. Absolutely great. Even though it's on hardware that was outdated the year it came out 7 years ago, right? It takes geniuses covering up a lot of the faults in order to make it look as good as
I would
does.
argue it was
So
outdated years before it came out, but yep.
Oh, no, yeah, because like I have a NVIDIA Shield. It has the same Tegra chip. A year later, the Nintendo Switch came out, right? So the Tegra chip was hot for a year, and then the Switch started using it. And now it's been using it for 7 years. So I say all that to say, the folks who are still using it, still coming out with Mario Wonder, still coming out with all these things, and people who are buying it and really loving it. This shows you how skilled those developers are, and how interesting of an idea that Nintendo has to say, hey, this hardware is going to be the benchmark for a long time, so don't even worry about it. Just like keep it moving, keep making your games, and still somehow, some way, they keep keeping people interested, right? But so all that is to say, I agree. But can you imagine right now if Tears of the Kingdom came out on actual like comparable hardware? I had to emulate that thing on a PC to get 60 frames to get 4K. Imagine if it came out that way natively, right? Imagine if what they would do. Imagine if the cell shading was there not as a design to hide certain faults, but as a design choice, right? I just want to see that one day. I want to see Nintendo's developers be given real tools and see what they do.
We very well may see that with their next release in the Switch 2, because from what we're hearing, it's Gen 8 hardware. And look, Gen 8 hardware, I guess, isn't anything to be terribly sneezed at. I do want to jump to a couple of super chats, but then I want to jump to Pete, because I want to get Pete's take on whether he would like to see Nintendo come to Xbox. Uso Vinny with a $1.99 super chat. Man, thank you very much. Uso says a majority of casual gamers are console gamers. Yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I would 110% have to agree with that. I would say maybe more mobile gamers. The most casual gamers are mobile gamers. Huggy Channy with a $10 super chat. He says, I know the leak was a mistake because it had actual email addresses left in it. If they meant to do it, they'd at least block those. They also had non-Microsoft info that leaked, which would be a liability. Yeah, well, that's absolutely true. Tinfoil hattery, Hargate. That's all I'm saying. Pete, do you want to see Nintendo on Xbox? Well, I don't know.
Absolutely not. Yeah, absolutely not. You know my take on consolidation. We've talked about it before. I think that we've got 3 players in the marketplace. They're all, working against each other in some, way to, fight for people's money, to fight for people's business. And I think that if it went down to 2, it's just not good for the consumer at the end of the day. And Nintendo does do their own thing. I get that. And I actually like what they do. I think the Switch, I love how they think outside the box. It doesn't always work. I think the Wii is an example of that. But the Switch has been a phenomenon. And kudos to them. And I do think it's a great device, regardless of, if you're not getting the frames or the resolution, the ability just to take it with you wherever you go, plug it in when you're at home. I think, and along with the IPs that are just, they're the best in the industry. Those
Iconic.
Mario and Zelda. Yeah, they truly are iconic. So no, I do not want to see any more consolidation. I think that Microsoft, after acquisition of ABK, will slow down. I hope they do. I don't really want to see any more consolidation in the marketplace. I think we're at a kind of a stable place now where all three players can compete against each other, compete for the consumer's dollar. And so, yeah, look, that's where I stand. I know other people have differing opinions about this, namely Umbra, but that's where I stand.
Yeah, look, absolutely understandable. I'm with you on the let's not consolidate the entire industry because competition is good for consumers. Look, I do want to move on to the next topic. It's the topic that's going to be very, very interesting and spicy. But before I do, guys, please hit the like button, share us out. As Saltiest Gaming said with the $5 super chat, he said, hit the like button and share this out. It's exactly what I said. Thank you for the $5 super chat, mate. You didn't need to do that. We go live 8 p.m. EST every Friday. If you're new here, subscribe. If you're in Australia, it's 10 a.m. If you're in the West, then it is 8 a.m. So we got some news out of this leak that the Xbox Series S is obviously more prevalent in the market. And now I think a lot of people haven't pointed this out, but there's a pie chart showing the sales figures from the Series S and the Series X. It's a split of 74.8% for the Series S and 25.1% for the Series X. And I think it's important to point out that these are for the month of April in 2022. This is not the total split. We don't have those figures. Some pundits are talking that it's around about the 50-50 split. If people will remember, there was a definite serious chip shortage at the time. And I think they were just sort of coming out of it there. This, to me, is sort of what I believed. I think I've said in the past, it's probably around about a 70-30 split. And this is where I may align, and some of you guys in the chat, don't attack me. But you're probably going to. And me and Kay, we've had this conversation in the background, and I'm probably going to kick it to Salty, and then I'll kick it to Kay, and then we'll go around the panel. I was hoping that we wouldn't see the Series S continue on. And from the looks of their roadmaps going forward, that's exactly what it looks like is going to be happening. I don't believe the Series S holds back gaming. That's just not a thing. However, I do believe as it's tied directly to the Xbox Series X, there are going to be circumstances in which third parties, we may not get the optimization that it should get. And that's not because of the Series S isn't capable. That's because it takes more time and effort to develop for it. And I think as well, when we found out that we're looking at a new console in 2028, 2029, and then we aren't getting a refresh insofar as a Pro, which was my hope. My hope was a Pro and the X would become the S, and then the S would just peter out over time, is that I think we will start to see this become more of a problem, especially around the third-party games. And that's sort of my concern. I think first party will learn to use the tools and they'll become quite effective at showing what they can do. And I know, Kay, we've had this conversation. And you did turn me around on a couple of my points. So that conversation we had in the background was educational and helpful. But I still see it as being a problem going forward. So look, Salty, I know you've had your opinions on the S, and I do know some of them. But do you think that this is an L for Xbox going forward, that they should continue to support the S moving into 2028, 2029, especially when and I tend to agree with your point that you made the other day, if the Xbox doesn't come with a Pro or something to combat PlayStation 5's Pro, if it releases, then with the S and the X that they have, I think they're in a little bit of trouble. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I made a video when the specs leaked on the actual Xbox Series S, because there was a lot of misinformation that was going on, like RDNA 2.0 and like the CPU is going to be on par with the PlayStation. All these things came out, right? But when I saw the specs, I was just like, why is Microsoft doing it? I knew why they were doing it. Sorry, I hit the mute button. I knew why they were doing it is because it's a lower cost option to get into Game Pass, and that's what the end game is, just like what you guys said. It's an ecosystem for them. They want people to access the product. But the long and short of it is they had to cut some areas when it comes to the specs, and the memory pool and the memory is just really bad. And it's developers have talked about on this, and I thought it was a misstep in the fact that Microsoft could have just done what PlayStation did, is just give people options. If you want to give a cheaper option, do that digital version, because that's what ultimately I bought with PlayStation, because I'm a cheap bastard, like I go with the cheaper option, which is the digital version. I'm not big on physical games or whatever. And it's the same hardware. You're getting the same experience graphically, but what they said and what they did with this is just, it's kind of doubling down on the fact that if that is the majority of the player base, you will target development towards that, or it will be the lowest common denominator when you're developing for these systems. So you will always have to have that in the back of your mind when you're developing for this game, is that lowest common factor. And it's just going to, the gap is going to widen even more when you're going down to 2025, which this leak had. The Xbox Series, whatever it's called, the X version that's all digital, will still be at that $500 price point, but it will have a bigger internal storage. It's not like you're boosting any of the power. And I think that that's just kind of a misstep as well. And it's just showing that maybe Microsoft is backing off of this. We want the power narrative, because I bought the Xbox One X. A lot of you guys did. Probably all of you. Because what happened in the beginning of the generation is the PlayStation 4 was dog walking the original fat Xbox, because they went with the Kinect, and that drew some of the power and it was more expensive. We all know that story. So they came out with the mid-gen refresh, which is the Xbox One X, and that's where that power situation came. We're not getting outpowered, right? This is our 4K option. It's going to always be the better option for them. And it's just, it feels like to me that maybe their approach is they don't care about that anymore. They don't care about being the top dog when it comes to power or any of that, because if that was the case, they would be going the traditional mid-gen refresh, which would be to increase your power and like the abilities of the console. Does that make sense to me? It's just, that's what I think from an outside perspective. I think it would have been ideal for them to launch a digital and a non-digital version and then go down that route, but they're going this other route. So that's my thoughts on it.
When you say traditional, I'm definitely going to kick it to Kay. I mean, it's important to remember that the last gen was the only gen that we've really seen a proper refresh with power boosts. We've seen refreshes in slims, and in that traditional sense, that's usually what happens. They find cheaper ways to produce silicon, and then they release those and start to actually make money off those consoles. And the power boost is the first time we saw it, and I know I'm going to hear it from Pete, because that was because of the 4K. Sort of step up. We're going to have this conversation about the Pro again, I bet. But Kay, I wanted to go to you because I know very well where I think you're going to go with this. But would you have a response to that, to what Salty's?
Sure. So, okay, first and foremost, let me address the idea that you were saying about how the breakout was and how there were chip shortages. Yes, it's true, there are chip shortages, but there were chip shortages, and they're also using the same SoC to supplement the Azure Data Center. So they have two strains on their supply chain, right? And somehow, some way, Series S was the one that sold out. I hear what Salty's saying, and by and large, he's saying what you're saying. And when you and I had this conversation, Riskit, what did I say? I said, from a consumer's advocate standpoint, from a consumer surrogate standpoint, I don't disagree with anything you're saying, because Microsoft has not been successful at threading that needle. They haven't been successful at convincing the people they need to convince of what they have, right? But where I disagree with you folks is, just because you didn't hear the tree fall in the woods doesn't mean it didn't fall, right? That's what all I'm saying to that, right? I can tell you that the hardware you're seeing is not being used to its fullest capability. That is a fact, right? Why? Context. That's all that matters, right? And that's where the mushy middle of they should spend time convincing consumers and developers that this thing is a worthwhile pursuit and you should spend the time needed, right? I think the one analogy I used for Riskit when we had this conversation in the background was, you have two places you need to go, right? You need to go, you get out your house, you're going to the left 1 mile or 1 kilometer, you're going to go get some coffee. You're going to the right, opposite direction 1 kilometer, you're going to pick up your car, right? Whichever decision you make will make the other thing twice as long to get because you made that choice, right? You go get your coffee, it makes getting the car much longer. You go get the car, it makes getting the coffee much longer. It just is what it is if you're walking. That is literally what we're describing when we're talking Xbox versus PlayStation. But somehow, because the pool is bigger on PlayStation side and they go there first and it makes everything more difficult for Xbox, it's Xbox's fault. No. If there's a fault to be levied at Xbox, and I agree with you on that, Riskit, it's that when that decision was being made, they should have had a bug in those developers' ears, or they should have had their product out blowing people's wigs back, showing you how amazing it is. So the decision maker has no choice but to decide your way, right? But if they do decide your way, 100%, this box will outshine what you think of as possible today, because no one has used it in the way it's supposed to be used. Even now, even they themselves who built it have not used it in the way it's meant to be used. So for me, technology guy, nothing makes me more happier than to see Microsoft double down on the hardware they built. So my pushback, do I disagree with you? Hold on. One thing, real quick. I'll let you rebut me because I know you have some thoughts. Where I will agree with you is ultimately, when this is all said and done, will they succeed or will they fail? That will be up to them and how they convince developers / consumers. Because the hardware is the tree that fell in the woods. Whether you're there or not to listen, it's still the hardware. It can still do all those things. Whether they convince you to use it, developer, or they convince you to buy it, consumer, that will be the mushy middle that matters.
So I don't have my pad here, which I normally write down some things. I'm at work, but the conversation that we had revolved around whether the Series S, and if you're in the chat, I do apologize occasionally, being Australian, I swear. The conversation we had was the S a fuck up or was it not? And I think where we got to on this whole conversation was, in some ways yes, and in some ways no. And your contention is the hardware is not the fuck up. It is the way in which they have marketed
the way
it.
They've sold it to people.
They've sold it to people, and the way
they've sold it to developers, the way they've sold, and I know Salty said Halo Infinite. Halo Infinite should have been a showpiece. I know it would have been impossible to achieve because that means you would have had to have 2 separate teams building 2 separate products that look the same. But in the 90s, they did that. Yes, budgets were lower. But at the end of the day, you're trying to convince people this box can do more. So show us what it can do. I know it can do more because I can read the white paper. I understand what the speeds and feeds means, right? But the normal man who says, oh, this thing can bake bread and can do all this amazing things, unless you show them, then that person has every right to go, nah, you lied to us.
So, but here's the thing, and they have yet to show us what, and I could I want to go around the panel, but I mean, on Salty's show, they made a good point. Why is there a 30 FPS mode in Forza 8? We shouldn't have that. And I in some ways agree, in some ways disagree. It depends on what you're after in your gaming, and everyone, options are always good. So the more you have, the better it is, in my opinion. But what they need to do to show the power of this box is get their first parties onto games that show the power of this box. And they have just yet to do that. We haven't seen it.
But which first parties? Be careful when you say first parties, because as soon as you say first parties, people start talking Bethesda. People start, remember, and the context matters. Forgive me. We're talking
the coalition.
Yes, there you go. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about the coalition. We're talking about Turn 10. We're talking about, those are the guys. We're not talking Redfall. We're not talking Starfield. I don't even think we're talking what do you call it? What is it? Avowed, right? Because all those were in pre-production before they became first party. And the first decision you make is the most important. What's the platform? And if the platform is everyone, you choose your biggest pool first because that's where the money is. So that means you're walking 1 mile to go get your car. that makes getting the coffee and everything else much more difficult. Don't blame the coffee. It's just sitting there. You could have gotten it first. You chose to go get the car first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Umbra, I want to kick over to you, man. Do you feel like knowing that that we're going to have Series S's down the line and that the console refresh? I mean, and again, this is my contention, is that Xbox could most definitely have pivoted in the last couple of years, and they could be looking at a Pro based on leaks and things they've heard from PlayStation. But that aside, from knowing what we know now, do you think this is an L for Xbox, that they're just doing this refresh and they're going to continue on with the S?
I don't think it's an L, and I mean, to go to the discussion that you guys are having, I definitely get both points. I feel like though the S always gets so much slander and hate driven toward it simply because most of us talking about it are hardcore gamers. So typically we're looking at it like, what is this thing here? Why is this here? Because we have the higher end SKU, typically most of us that's talking about this type of stuff on podcasts and such, right? Mm-hmm. or on Twitter and things of that nature. So I feel that's really what it comes from. I do get the complaint, but I don't know.
You know what, Umbra, one thing real quick. I don't mean to cut you off. I know I hear people saying it in the chat, and you're absolutely right. What you're describing too, it also bears mentioning the lowest common denominator in PC gaming is the PC. The lowest common denominator in gaming, period, was the Switch. Now it's a phone, right? It's an iPhone, $1,000 phone that runs RE at barely 30 frames per second. But that's the lowest common denominator. It is not the Series S, which always is somewhere in the middle. I'm sorry. Please continue.
No, I mean, I hear you exactly. I think, though, like, we're not looking at it that way. Like, as a gamer, and that's why I said I think this argument stems from console wars more than anything else, because those who are making an argument about the S and how it's bad and all those things are only making it because they want to down Xbox. If we're really being honest, because most of us have the higher end SKU. Let's just be real. The ones who are complaining have a PS5 or have an Xbox Series X. Those are the people who you're seeing talking about, oh, it's a potato and all. Like, that's really what it comes down to. And I do get some of the points, but when you get into the point of, well, and I think you made a great point, Kay, when you said that it comes down to first party, and we've had that debate here before, and that discussion here before, where we said it comes down to first party to show what they can do with that thing and show what can be done. And I think Microsoft has sometimes failed to do that, and that's where it comes from, a lot of that. But I think the question was raised, I believe, by Salty. He said, well, what is it like? What's the point of it, right? I mean, but he answered it too, because the point was to get more of the casual market, and having a more affordable current gen console is definitely a W. I mean, the numbers, by the way, we've seen apparently are skewed, Risk, as the Matt Piscatella pointed out that it was a 52-48, not 75-25 that people were claiming. What do you all think about that? Is what I would like to know.
Well, I tend to sort of lean towards that, but I know Pete doesn't. Actually, really good question. I'll slip that over to Pete, because I know Pete sort of disagrees. I've always said it's around about a 70-30, or a 60-40 sort of split. That's just sort of my estimation off the top of my head.
When you say that 70-30, 60-40, Riskit, when you say that estimation, do you mean in favor of the X or in favor of the S?
In favor of the S, yeah. I believe that's been most of their sales, and I don't know if that's because going forward, initially we had the chip shortage. Yes, was on the shelves. 2021 was that banger year. You can understand why those sales are at where they're at in 2022. Going forward, I feel like that might have evened out, but I still think it's a bit of a lean to the S, which is why I was so against the dropping the parity clause for Baldur's Gate. But Pete, I know that you don't. Before the show, you said you didn't think so. You thought it was sort of more still sitting around the heftier split towards the S.
I would have thought so, just because the price of the S is literally unbeatable. So if you're going in as a parent or a grandparent and you don't know much about gaming, I'm not talking about us. We're the hardcore. We're always going to go push towards the best we can get. But this economy and that price of that console allowing you to play next generation games, I just think that that price is literally unbeatable. It's a reason why I really don't want them to move away from the S. And I strongly agree with Kay when he said we just haven't seen this little beast of a machine used. What you get inside of that for the price is phenomenal. The more people that Xbox get into the ecosystem, and they really needed to push people into the ecosystem. You said yourself, like Brisket, that last generation was a generation they couldn't lose because you have all those digital games. So you got to give people a reason to buy it. That entry price is that reason. And the more people that then get into the ecosystem, buy the digital games, means more money for games that we want to see being made. And so I think at the end of the day, it becomes a win-win situation for us as gamers. But they changed the GDK at the start of the generation. PlayStation didn't. Like, this is a big thing. COVID, the interruption that caused, with people not being able to work, side by side with each other. I think all these things have added up to, them taking longer than we would have hoped to see, the games, and what we want out of the consoles come to fruition. Now, I think that it's changing now, and we're going to see, bigger and better games. We're going to see the tools being used. We're going to see, the developers learning out to iron out the hard edges of, development and, where they can smooth things over. So I do have high hopes for this. I really am glad that Xbox didn't dump the S. I think it's needed, especially with the economy we're going into. And I just think the machine's a great little machine, especially if you're, like I said before, a parent or a grandparent looking to buy your kid, a gaming console that they can play pretty much all games on.
But I mean, and again, I'm going to play a bit of devil's advocate. Here we've already seen the S hold back the X in Baldur's Gate 3. Like, we've seen that happen, regardless of the reasons. And regardless of the reasons, that's Xbox's fault. So whatever the reasons are for that, the lack of foresight, no one could have predicted how big that game was going to be. The lack of sending teams out to assist with the development of that game. We've already seen the S hold back the X in some way. So when people say that, and Umbra, I mean, you yourself were onto that, and when people say that, we've seen it happen. There's fact to it. And again, tree falling in the woods. Absolutely, we haven't seen the power of it. So Blue, I would say to you, like, we had a bit of a long conversation. Blue, you were there for it. There's many things that Xbox could have done at the start of this generation to shore up the S, to show the power of the S. They had Hive Busters there. They could have developed within UE4, separated that from Gears 5, and created a standalone game that would have shown the power of the S. But they didn't do that. And so I personally hope going forward they've got this stuff in development. They've got their eye on the ball, and they are going to show us some of this first party. But Blue, do you think that it's a misstep that they're going to continue to support the S? And hopefully not going into the generation. From my point of view, I as a hardcore gamer, I'm always going to go for whatever the top machine is. And I have an S, Blue. You have too. Do you think it's an L that they're just going to continue to support it going into the next gen?
No. And this is where, I mean, you and I are going to argue about this all the time. I have an X and I have two S's for various reasons. And I mean, I gotta say that little S does some work. It is unbelievable what that thing can do. And whether you think that they under-designed it or not, the fact of the matter is there's a couple things going on here. One, they already had this future vision for where they're going as an ecosystem, right? Not as a console company, right? So for them, it's a low barrier entry, just trying to get people in, and it's going to be an easy sell for people with who are PlayStation centric, but they do want to pick up Game Pass. They don't want to do PC, so they can pick that up pretty easily. I think I got both of mine for $250, and then on the other hand, they released with it. Whether you like it or not, it is this gen console. you cannot move forward in this gen and leave that behind. You've obviously got a lot of them out there, and they're working pretty well for everybody. That works well for me. That thing looks fantastic, and it travels well. You can get the little X screen right and go on the go with it, and it's a great console. I absolutely adore it, and it would be a huge L for them to not support it and keep it, because they promised it at the beginning of the generation. This is our next gen console as the lower barrier entry point. So how do you abandon that? You don't. You can't. There's no way.
So
I think
one last thing from me, just real quick. Apologies, real quick, about the memory thing. I know you talked that Salty talked about the memory thing. While I agree that the memory thing is a problem, it wasn't created in a vacuum to say, oh well, we're saving money, so less memory, deal with it, right? Again, it's to my point about which choice you choose first. If you made the choice to go develop for Xbox first, they have options for you to offset the memory issues, right? They have a lot of tools to offset the memory issues. And if you use them, you will have no memory issues at all. And they knew that, right? But of course, where I'm agreeing with you guys, where I'm falling on your side on this is, it doesn't matter what you build into it. If you don't show it, if you don't convince, if you don't really get folks to say, oh, this is why it's worth my while to spend the time and effort and money to use it, because it will be a better product, then even if it doesn't get used, ultimately it's your fault.
But
right?
then what's that reason, Kay? That reason is revenue, right?
Oh.
When the revenue leans towards one side, you're not going to develop for that.
Exactly.
You're not going to develop for the side that makes you less money.
Well, actually, if the profit leans to one side, but that's a whole different conversation. I know people we're making about profit versus revenue a little bit ago, but that's my point. Go ahead, Sal.
If I can interject, it's just, if you guys rewind the tape, because memory fades. They advertised this as like a 120 frames per second machine, and they're putting all these buzzwords out there. Like we saw that, like some of the people in the media were saying that the CPU was better than the PlayStation 5. And the reason why it's an issue now is because I'm not questioning whether it's a good strategy or not. It's a great strategy for Microsoft because they want to get more people into the fold. And what's the best way to do that? It's a low cost of entry. But the thing is like, what did you say this console was going to be, and what is it actually being? And the thing is, if you have a PC and there's a bottleneck, like on my PC, like if I have a great GPU and I have a great CPU, but my memory is real bad, my games aren't going to run good. You know, that's the problem. So it's
it's not that simple though. It's not, the console is not that simple as the PC, where you need more memory bandwidth for it to run. Right? They know that they're putting little memory bandwidth in, but then they also know that if you use compression blocks and you use mesh shaders to build your game and author your game, you can literally build the game small and then scale it up without incurring that cost. Again, like I said, it's the choice of convincing the developer to go that mile, to use that step to offset your memory issue, right?
So
if they did that,
go ahead. Okay. There is ways around these stumbling blocks, what you're saying, but guess what it takes? It takes more resources, more man hours, more development costs, and all this other stuff. And the question that I would say is like, well, if it isn't holding things back, then what is your graphical showpiece on the Xbox so far?
This is where I agree with you, because you're speaking from a consumer advocate perspective. And it doesn't matter the mushy middle. It doesn't matter the context. It's about the end result. And if the end result doesn't equal what you want it to equal, there you go. And in that instance, sure. But I'm a guy of context. I'm a guy that loves dealing with the technology of it, right? And what I'm trying to tell you is, whether they use it or not, it's still capable of it. Whether the developers actually ever possibly use it to its fullest fruition or not doesn't mean it can't do it, right?
For sure.
It's still capable of it. That's what I was saying. The tree fell in the woods. Whether you heard it or not, it's not their problem. It still fell, right?
But what I would say to you is, we need to see those results to prove that you say if it is capable.
Of course. No, you're absolutely right. And I'm not denying that, right? I won't deny that. And that's why some of the smoke is absolutely valid. But as folks in the chat are pointing out, right, even with the 120 frames per second argument, there are more 120 frames games on Series S than there are on PS5, and that's a fact even today. Right?
So
which tells you that when you use it and you aim for that target, you can actually hit that target. You must choose to aim for that target in order to hit it.
Would you say that Starfield was affected with the development on what was actually being able to put out as a product because they had to develop for the S?
No. I will say that the Starfield was more affected as a product for what they had to do because it started out as a PlayStation included game. Had they not started out as a PlayStation included game, that would have made the Series S shine brighter because they had to develop without the smart features of the Xbox, right? Because the pool is bigger on PlayStation, and you can't develop the way PlayStation and then do the same thing on Xbox. You must make a choice. So if you choose that pool, that means when you port to Xbox, it'll never be as good. And they chose that pool, right? Mm-hmm. So no matter what you do, it'll always be just not as good. Had they chosen Xbox first, meaning they were first party, you would have seen a different outcome.
So we see with Cyberpunk, the re-release, right? What time does for a game and what they're actually supposed to put in there and what they had deadlines and stuff like that. So I'll always question whether Starfield could have released 60 frames per second. Like I would always question that. If they had the extra time?
You're comparing a third-party developer versus first-party, right? There's always differences. Third-party has different priorities than first.
I mean, Microsoft's $1 trillion company. I mean, it shouldn't be CD Projekt Red, which is independent. Shouldn't be getting out. They shouldn't be outperforming Microsoft. Like they have all the funds.
Don't get me wrong. So let me make it clear, okay? And I'm keeping it very base and very simple. Sure. Development is a layer cake. You start from the bottom, you work your way up. It's a 7-8 year layer cake, right? That's what it is. And we know that it took 7 years to build Starfield. By what time in the layer cake process did they become Xbox first party? And oh, by the way, the most important decision in development is the first decision. What platform you're using? What CPU is it going to? What is your resource pool?
So what about
that layer
Redfall?
Cake was many years. Same thing. Many years into development as a third-party game. And I say this and I get smoke all the time, but I haven't heard anybody that can deny me and rebut me in my assertion here. If you are in the world we live today, and get the virtual tomatoes ready for me. I know they're going to throw it at me. In the world we live today, where we have the platforms we have and it's split the way it's split, if you are a third-party developer and you're making a game, you're making a PlayStation first game. So that means Starfield was a PlayStation first game. Whether we'll ever see a PlayStation version of it or not, they started as a third party. And as a third party, where's the biggest pool? PlayStation. When Bethesda walked out the door and decided to go left versus right, they went to the biggest pool first because at the time they didn't know they were going to be first party. And that layer cake started building that way. So by the time they became first party, all you got to do is clean it up. You can't throw it all away and start from scratch. You ain't getting Starfield for another 7 years. This is my point when I say, hey, if you're gonna compare first party, make sure you're talking about those who were incubated from Microsoft. In other words, when ABK becomes first party, don't expect all their games to magically start being best on Xbox overnight.
But because
a lot of those games are already in development.
When I say Halo Infinite, there's another excuse that it was developed on the Xbox One. There's always an excuse.
No, but see, let me jump in here.
When you look at the other side, there's no excuse for Spider-Man, it has many options.
Yeah, cool. So let me jump in here. So these are not excuses. These are actual factual reasons that you can point to. You can point to as factual ways that games are developed. Now, if we get to a point in 2024, 2025, right? And I completely agree. And me and Kay, we went back and forth on this for like a very long time. Unfortunately, Blue's ears were bleeding by the end. But you sort of come to a point that if we're getting to 2024, we're getting to 2025, and games like Forza, games like Fable, again, not so much avowed. Games like the next Gears game or whatever comes out of the Coalition.
I'll keep it simple for you, Riskit. If Fable comes out with still wishy-washy graphics and options that aren't quite there, if the next Gears comes out and it's not, and it doesn't melt your face on the Series S, then all the smoke is continuously righteous and there's nothing anyone can say. Like I said, whether the tree fell or not. It was their choice to use the hardware. And if first party doesn't use the hardware, still, it doesn't make the hardware not capable. It just means there are a bunch of fools who chose not to use their own capabilities.
Which goes back to Salty's point of management,
You're right,
right?
but that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. The coalition are going to bring the hammer down. It's going to look amazing. I think Obsidian are a great team as well. Although I don't think Fable showed fantastically well when they first showed it, but I think I expect great things from it. Look, I think that the JediKnight and all that would have been matured enough by that stage, and I think we're going to see something special.
Yeah, to your point, Salty, as
At the
well.
end of the day, all I care about, I'm sorry, I'll let it go. I'm just saying, all I care about at the end of the day is, look, like, if you are upset with the console because they didn't give you what you want, you're upset because they promised you a bad bill of goods, if you will, right? You have every right to be upset. You do, right? I'm not saying you don't. I'm not going to point to all these things and say you shouldn't be. You have every right to be, because you had a sense, whether through marketing or whatever, you had a sense that they had something for you, and now you're feeling slighted. I am in no way, shape, or form here to tell you you're wrong. All I'm here to tell you is the hardware is capable of more, and the context of why that's not happening is interesting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, great. And Salty, I mean, and a lot of the PlayStation guys, and you'll see me not argue specific points online because I know they're losing points. And you know, look, I do play devil's advocate on the show a lot, but what I'll say is, we're 3 years into this console generation, and we should not be where we are right now. There's reasons for why we are where we are, and perfectly reasonable reasons. But we shouldn't be there. We shouldn't be at a point where a 12 teraflop system is occasionally outperformed by a 10 teraflop system, and T-flops don't matter. But we shouldn't be at a point where the more powerful system is sometimes matched or bettered by, you know, a system that's not quite as powerful. You know, obviously APIs notwithstanding, different things, you know, and this is where your first party comes in. But we just have yet to see a proper first party game, and I don't think you can use 343. If we jump back to Bungie, it may be a different conversation. But the studio itself, the game itself, the way it was developed, what was going on during development, I don't think Halo is a good example, Salty. I mean, I don't think we have an example.
The biggest thing for me, I would say, is the power narrative is for a select minority of gamers. A majority of gamers don't care. They don't care. They don't even know what frame rate is. They probably don't even know what 4K is on their television if you ask them. Okay. So the general population, they don't give a rat's ass, and that's just the way it is. Look at the Switch sales. I mean, I try to play 100%. Fortnite on my Switch. It's like 360p with struggling 15 frames. Just like, that's not a priority for the main populace. But what the thing that I'm trying to say is, if I bought an Xbox Series X, which I have, and they were touting all this power and stuff, I want to see that. Like, I want Xbox to have these graphical showpieces. Like someone in the chat was saying, Hellblade 2. I want that to show out, because that'd be like, well, that warrants the purchase of my X. Not in the back of my mind, I have to think, well, why are these dropping at 30 frames with no options or any of this stuff? It's like, because it's a fine line between developer talent and what your power is. Because if you don't have developer talent, you're not going to get the product that you want. It doesn't matter how powerful the power is. It's like you could have an artist with all the greatest tools, right? All the most expensive paint. But if they don't have the talent, then you were not going to see it on the canvas. That's
I
the thing.
agree with you 100%. 100%. When people showed off The Last of Us 2, I was like, yep, there you go. You can have the best hammer in the world. Doesn't mean you're building the best house, right? Sure. Jordan can be wearing flip-flops. You could be wearing the tightest sneaks ever. He will still dunk all over you.
Yes.
Right? And you can tell that because The Last of Us 2, they made miracles with a mobile CPU, right? So clearly, absolutely, talent is a factor, is a big factor in the equation, right? I'm saying is, go ahead.
Which is going to go up substantially, because people don't even realize the resources. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. The amount of actual resources that they acquired through Activision is more important than Call of Duty would ever be, because they have
Agreed. Support
all
studios.
the talent, support studios, and all that other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's like now that you have that talent, put it into practice. Like that's
Hey,
where they can put the shoe on the throat of the competition. You have all
so
this.
Salty,
It's like
you were
know,
talking about the 120 frame stuff, right?
for sure.
One of the famous 120 frames games, COD, right?
Yes.
They acquired a company with studios who know how to use that hardware best.
Facts.
Right.
Yeah.
So we shall see what they can do. But again, I'm not sitting here defending or debating, right? At the end of the generation, if we can't point to one thing and say, yup, that's why you buy a Series S, and even and you know, the power narrative, which I know as a power fact, is never really brought to fruition, then the smoke continues to be righteous. And I have nothing to say about it, right? Because I know what I know, because this is the world I live in. I deal with infrastructure all the time, so I understand the hardware. But you shouldn't have to need a degree to understand how the console works. And if it doesn't work the way they said it does, and people are upset about that, hey, let them be upset. I think that's righteous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll just say, for those who are upset, I'll just throw this last part in there. Let it be a righteous upset, right? Don't fraud your way into being upset. And that's the problem I have with social media. I think people are too busy trying to live up to a standard because of the base of fans they have and they've accumulated, that they fake and fraud their way into, oh, I don't like this thing. Oh, woe is this. And it becomes just this cry fest. And it's just annoying, because gaming for me, much like if I draw art, right? Because I'm an artist. I haven't done it in a while though, but I'm still good. So, but you know, but like
Okay.
I had to throw that out there. It's much like me singing. I'm just really spectacular at it. But
oh my God,
I'm trying to be humble. To be humble, of course.
I think you're trying
yeah.
But just to say, it's like gaming is supposed to be fun. It's always weird to me when I see so many people so negative about gaming. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that there shouldn't be any criticisms. I'm just saying, when I see people always whining about something and never celebrating something, to me that speaks to what you're trying to appeal to with your audience, not and less of what you're trying to appeal to as a gamer. Yeah,
look, and I think I would say, from my point of view, quite often I piss my own chat off, right? Because I'll tell you exactly what I think, and you may not agree, and that is absolutely fine. But these conversations are important to have, and they are important to have amongst one another. And look, there's joking online, so if you see me on Twitter, I'm usually out there trying to wind somebody up, and that's just jokes, and that's not important to me. But when you're being real and you're having the conversation, which I appreciate Salty coming on for, and we're having a good conversation about like why we're at where we're at, should we be there, and why shouldn't we be there, or why should we be further, or these are good conversations to have. I think that we need to have.
Yeah, I don't want to cut you off, but really, when it comes down to it, if you get past all the jokes online and Twitter, because that's just basically what it's about. I mean, if you're a gamer, you're going to play no matter where it is. That's why I have all the systems. Will my PC run anything? Probably not. I have the Switch, everything else. That's really where it is. It's like, if you really want to play a game, you're going to have that platform. And truly, if you're being honest, if Xbox does take that next step, then it will push PlayStation to do better, because they've been at the top for a long time. And it's like anything, like I go to sports again. It's like the great players. Well, how do they take their game to the next level? Well, they're pushed by other great players, Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, or whatever. So it's like, you can't get comfortable at the top, because there's stuff PlayStation's been doing lately that I'm not keen on. Right. But what pushes the other company to do anything? It's like, well, this is a feather in their hat, right? I mean, they got the resources. That's what I'm saying. Like, if I've always pointed to this, if Sony had the resources of Microsoft, I don't know what they would do. But that's what I'm saying. Like, you get Activision, you get all these developers, all these engines, all this experience, all the whatever. That's all good and well, but it needs to be put into practice so it raises the bar. I want Xbox to take the next step and be like, hey, this is what we're doing. it's your turn, PlayStation, to take the next step or up your game, right? Or get left behind, because that's essentially what it is. As a consumer, you go to what the best product is. That's always how it's been.
But based on the leaks, and we're having a thought experiment, because obviously those leaks are now considered they weren't really ever going to happen, right? It's a different world of those leaks. But let's assume that those leaks happen. Wouldn't those leaks then presume that they're doing what you're asking them to do? They're talking about 8 first-party games in 1 calendar year. That's kind of unheard of.
I've said it myself. Like, I troll and stuff online, but I said this multiple times on my show. You got to give Xbox credit for the year that they're putting out, right? Like, because Phil Spencer literally said it was a disaster, whatever, 2022 with nothing. So it's like the output that they're putting out. You can be a fan of Starfield or whatever. That's generated crazy amount of attention to the platform, where it's like, for the good of the bad, it's attention. Starfield was trending and is trending, so that's a good thing for Xbox. It's the haters and the fans or whatever. At least people care about your product, because if it wasn't trending on social media, that means no one cares. It's like a Redfall situation. So it's like, if Xbox is having a better year, for the good, the bad, or whatever you want to say, or you're a hater or you're a fan, they're doing better, right? So that raises the bar. Like, if Xbox was continuously having a 2022, that doesn't do anybody any good. So it's like, say what you want about it. If it's good, if you love Starfield, you hate it, it's being talked about. And I think that's what's most important, because it is trending for Xbox. And before, they're having problems with that. Like, Quantum Break wasn't trending like Starfield is, right? Or any of these smaller games. It's like Xbox is trending again, and that's important. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I would only preface to say that I'd say probably something like a Hi-Fi Rush had a good spark for the people, right? They're heading in a good direction. They seem to have found some more creativity, whereas back in the day it seemed like they weren't prioritizing it. So on that, I agree. I think that them focusing on creativity seems to be working out for them.
Well, I mean,
I like that in the diversity.
Sorry. Diversity of games is great. Psychonauts too, even small things like Pentiment. But it was always going to be a little bit of time before we saw what Xbox was doing come to fruition. And I do think Starfield is the start. And I think you're right, Salty. The narrative is changing slowly but surely.
Umbra?
Yeah, I was just going to say, no, I like the diversity that Microsoft is going for. I mean, and it's going to get more diverse now with ABK being, approved. So I don't know. I look at it and I actually think Microsoft has actually created the more diverse field of gaming across the board when you look at things compared to, let's say, the direct competitor in Sony. I think Sony has deviated from that. So Sony is now more AAA focused.
Baby Steps is pretty diverse.
Yeah.
No, and I want to play that.
Baby Steps. Oh my god.
Yeah. That
was all for me.
Don't get me started.
Didn't the man have a crap stain in the back of his?
He did, man.
It looked like
in some cycles,
and Octodad was fun to play.
Yeah, in some circles, like I've been listening to a lot of PlayStation focused podcasts. They're just getting different, diverse opinions. Some people really love that first opening, while of course others really thought it was. Yeah,
I can guarantee you. I did too, but I can guarantee you, if Xbox had shown that, they would have been trashing that game until Oblivion. So I just don't buy it. I just don't buy it. If it was on Xbox Showcase, they'd been like, "Oh, yeah, what about Baby Steps, you bots?" Yeah, they would have.
Well, it's a walking simulator, I mean,
you know what you're doing there.
I don't listen to those people, bro. But I think Stray was pretty diverse as well, and look what that did. I mean, I don't think it was the Game of the Year narrative, but
here's the point.
That's not first party though, and I don't think it's diverse at all. I think it's very simple.
It's still shown off on the it still took PlayStation to go out there and do a deal with the third party, and they don't have to do a deal with all these games. So
Well, they actually did because they didn't have any first party games.
Well,
But my thing is like, we talk about diversity. Oh, I'm talking about diversity. I'm talking about first party. That's what I mean by that. I think Microsoft first party has been much more diverse than PlayStation. PlayStation used to have a much more diversity when it came when the PS3 era. PS2, PS3 era, PlayStation was untouchable diversity wise. I think anybody that played those and had those, and I had them all, can agree to that. I think nowadays PlayStation has been much more attuned to AAA, over the shoulder, let's just be real, type style games. And I love them. I'm just saying that diversity has gone out the window compared to what Microsoft is offering.
I mean, even Salty was saying that, right? As a PlayStation fan, even he was saying that, they've been focused in one area more than another, and not everybody's liking that. I too agree with you. I love PlayStation. I love my PlayStation. I sometimes have issues with how Sony makes certain moves, but I like my PlayStation. And it looks like it's becoming the box of AAAs and regurgitated remaster remakes, right? Which that's not how PlayStation used to be. So go ahead.
Sorry, we spoke on that, and that it's been a problem. Like Insomniac is carrying right now, and other than that, it's like crickets. Like that's not good. I've said my piece
to that M&A. Whoever agreed to that M&A of acquisition of Insomniac, somebody needs to give that guy a bag every year. Just give him more money. He just needs more money.
It's like 230 million or something like that. Insane. But with PlayStation, they definitely do. I would say that it is good to know what you're great at and be great at something instead of a master.
Jack of all trades,
like
master of none.
Jack of all trades, master of none. You're saying so they know what they're good at, but it does stagnate. But I think that they're overextending into the games of the service realm, because if you look at like all their executive meetings and stuff like that, and what they're focusing on, what they're investing in, is that games as a service. Like a lot of the acquisitions that they made on the smaller scale is going to be pushing towards that, and that's a huge risk for them. So they are trying to diversify the portfolio from that perspective, but it's a huge risk. So that's why it's like that's why I feel with them.
I do want to circle back though, and I completely agree. Is it the right risk to take though? But Blue, you were jumping in there and you wanted to talk about baby steps, and I know that was for you. And I would have to say that PlayStation, whether it's first party or third party, is starting to they've taken their cue from Xbox, as they often do. I mean, Xbox has taken a cue with the controller, but as they often do, and they've started looking into diversifying their portfolio, because I think it's been a complaint from fans, not just on the Xbox side that don't mind taking a dunk on PlayStation when they can, but I think it's also been a complaint from the actual the fan base, and a genuine complaint. So you were happy to see that, Blue, and I know you don't mind booting up the PlayStation 5 very occasionally.
Yeah. No, I mean, Umbra kind of talked through me and stole my thunder, Mr. Umbra. But it's funny because the PlayStation, the last, state of play or showcase or whatever they were calling it, Baby Steps was hilarious to me, and I was like, yes, that's it. Like, there you go, right? And I could give 2 pennies about Spider-Man or Final Fantasy. I don't care. I have no interest. And I love Insomniac. It's just Spider-Man's just not my thing. I don't like QuickTime events very much and all that. So, and Spider-Man, But the real point is the fact that it shows more of a diversification, right? Because Xbox is, if anything, they're lacking in, some of the stuff that are the things that Sony is very good at, right? But they have a wide variety, and they're really good at promoting variety. And that's where Sony's been kind of lacking, which is what you guys were all talking about. So it's good to see them, kind of starting to take a little more care for the indies and bringing some of those up. Whether that was an indie for you or not is kind of not the point, right? But it is interesting to see them going so hard into the gas games, because, it seems like, they went really hard into these epic single player third person, but they were lacking in other things. And now if they're going to go really hard into these gas games, are other areas going to suffer, right? It seems like hopefully they find a more rounded balance.
Yeah, it seems like a bit of an overcorrection in my view.
I would hope Sony goes and uses more of the IP they have. That's like the classic stuff. Like, where's the next Jack and Dexter? Even Siphon Filter, exactly. Use the IP that they have. I'm surprised they haven't used those, honestly. And the Siphon Filter would fit perfectly for the model they're going toward, at least, too, by the way. So I just don't get why they're not doing that.
You know, games of a service is where it's at, and that's where the money is, right? So, and they bought Bungie for a lot of that. So
is that I think
they can be, but you can also fail. Like most fail in that direction too. So that's why I'm wondering, like.
Yeah, I think there's a place for them, but I don't think you can be the box of that. You know what I mean? There's a difference, right?
But you know what, guys, though? It's kind of interesting. It seemed like they kind of struck a little too early in this realm, because I know maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but as few and as far between as PlayStation has had quote unquote gas games, the ones that have come out have been pretty darn good. Like, even though nobody really played them, like, you know, ask those who played The Last of Us as factions. They swear by it, right? Talk to me about the first. They're coming out with part 2 now. Now, of course, the minute I want to talk about it, yeah, Helldivers. There you go. Talk to me about the first Helldivers. Couldn't stop playing that game on my Vita and my PS3. That game was awesome. I am super excited that they're taking the IP seriously and coming back to it. People love SOCOM. People remember SOCOM fondly. It just seems like they themselves got out of the market. But when they were in the market, they were doing pretty well before the market got lucrative. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, and Destruction All-Stars was amazing. Oh, sorry, wrong game.
Stop it. See, now he's getting slanderous. Yeah, I didn't know.
I mean, it seemed like that.
Well, Salty brought up Redfall earlier.
It was a good move for them to, I think, buy Bungie. You know, and it sort of saved them really with releasing that absolute trash game Faction. So that was good to see as well. You know, put a stop to that. More rubbish. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding around, waiting for a bite, but I didn't get one. Yeah, look, we do need to move on to the next topic before we do. We are running 2 hours, but there's one more thing I wanted to go through. It was pretty relevant to what Salty was saying earlier and what you guys were sort of all discussing in insofar as their management. And something that put me at ease, and something I saw on Twitter recently. But before I do, guys, please hit the like button. If you are new, subscribe. We go live 8 p.m. every Friday EST. If you're in Australia, that's 10 a.m. in the East and 8 a.m. in the West. If there is anyone in the West, shout out, because I'm in the West. I'm actually at work, so I've got to get a move on. Now, sort of the next thing I wanted to quickly read through, and you have to excuse me because it's a little bit long, was an email that Phil Spencer sent regarding the 2022. And we, look, fan or not fan, I bleed green. But I can admit and be honest with myself and with you guys in the chat and on the panel and guests, that management has seemed to have been a problem. And as I said earlier, for reasons, whatever reasons, there's always going to be reasons, but management has seemed to be an issue. And generally when you're at work or you're running a business, it's the results that matter. I'll often say to people, I don't want excuses, I want results. You know, and excuses are really reasons. So sure, there's reasons, but we haven't really seen the results of good management from Xbox, which I believe exists. And this email sort of goes a long way for me to personally reassure me that the right things are being said, the right things are being done behind the scenes. They don't always come off, and you're never going to be perfect. And I did see something on Twitter earlier on today. If you've seen the Phil Spencer emails, then you're not a fan of Xbox, you're a fan of Phil Spencer. I categorically disagree with that. I think if you have any sort of business acumen and you know what a good leader is and how good leaders operate, and you read any of these emails, then you're not just a fan. You definitely will be a fan of Phil Spencer, but you're a fan of the management over of Xbox, and you know that it's in good hands. And I'm sure that maybe there's some people out there that might disagree with that. Maybe even on this panel right now. We'll talk about that in a second. But Phil sent out an email in 2022 saying, with the news, Starfield is going to miss holiday, not broadly communicated yet. Let's let Jamie manage that. I love the handball. I said this on the show earlier in the week. He's like, I ain't touching that. Jamie's got this. He said, still not a ton of clarity on the launch date of Redfall and Stalker 2 development, so impacted by the war in Ukraine. I feel we're in a huge hole with our games lineup, both for platform marketing and differentiation and our Game Pass content. We keep talking a bit about AAA a quarter in the service, and it feels like we're likely to go through a gap of almost 16 months between big exclusive launches on platforms. And I'll say again, where the fuck was Age of Empires? Anyway, Halo Infinite being our last on December 8th, 2021. This is really a disaster situation.
I thought that was part of the email. Jesus Christ.
This is Halo Infinite being our last on December 8th, 2021. This is really a disaster situation for us, given that we've invested in content across the studios in our Game Pass content fund. We need to learn from this and build a plan going forward. In terms of learning, I think we need to get much better at overall portfolio planning on our games with real honesty on dates. Doing this from memory, summer 2021, December 2021, we had an amazing lineup of games with Flight Sim, Psychonauts 2, H4. You didn't have H4. It wasn't on console, Phil. This is the one thing I would argue with Phil if I had him here right now. Forza 5 and Halo. There were good third-party games in that time frame as well. Back for Blood, and we set a very high bar in 2021 on quality and on pacing of content, which was awesome to see. But to come off that year with no big exclusives launching in 2022 is a portfolio planning miss that we can't afford. If we need to delay launches, understanding there's a financial impact of that, to create more regular beats for us, then we need to do that. We have to all understand the situation we are in now is a failure of our planning and production execution. Now let's roll up our sleeves and get planning on the next 2 years of games. First, we need to build an accurate list of games for launches that are coming in the next 24 months with expected dates. But now I don't want to litter the list with content updates or seasons for existing games. We need launches. Let's build this across first party, second party, and third party, looking at Game Pass launches. I think we're going to see that our next big new game is Redfall, hopefully. And I'm not aware that Stalker 2 dates, but I saw that the studio delayed indefinitely. Are there other games we can get? I know the overall portfolio is fairly light from third party, but let's dig. We need to get some clarity on our internal launch dates. I'm sending this now as I feel the pressure from Tamarind and how we are going to show up in terms of dates. It will be very obvious to the community with both our lack of updates and so many games and lack of updates on so many games and lack of clarity on almost everything in the show that we are out of position. I need us to work on this as leaders. We've dealt with difficult situations before. We'll do it again. I'm frustrated by where we are, but we'll get through that. Most important is building a winning plan. So let's get on that. That is a fucking leader, like right there. That is like, we messed up. It's not just you, it's all of us. We all made mistakes here. Don't care about what the mistakes were. Let's work on fixing them. That and absolutely fantastic. They then went on to send emails backwards and forwards about what games they could bring to Game Pass, the likelihood of getting them, where they're high value, low value, and just notes. There was so much that they're doing in the background to bring us to 2023 that we're having. I think you can question the execution, but at this point, I really don't think you can question the management. Pete, I'm going to jump to you. As a longtime Xbox fan, does this give you a bit of satiation, a little bit of confidence in the brand to know that this is being handled the right way, the way that it should be?
Yeah, in Phil we trust. He is a little bit of a shark in the background. He comes off as a really nice guy, but we all know that what Xbox did in 2022 was unacceptable. There were no games out there, and look, we all talked about it. I think we all talked about it extensively, and it can't ever happen again. For the first party portfolio that they have going at the moment is, I think, second to none. In not only in terms of diversity, but in terms of quality. And so they need to be able to schedule that roadmap so they do what they said they were going to do at the start of the generation, and we get a big AAA game every quarter. And what I don't understand about 2022 is why they didn't fill those gaps. I mean, Microsoft's pockets are very, very deep. They should have filled those gaps with more third-party exclusive games, like they did with Outriders. That was a big hit for Xbox. So something that definitely needs to be worked on. I think they know it needs to be worked on, and like I said, it is good that they're listening to the community. I think that's what Microsoft does really, really well. So the things that we talk about in the community on podcasts, it does actually get back to them. They do have their ear to the ground when it comes to these kind of things.
Salty, I wanted to go to
Peter,
you because.
real quick.
Oh, no. Okay, jump in.
No. Yeah, no. I just wanted to harp on something that Peter just said about how he can't imagine why and how they didn't have enough money to fill in those gaps. I was exactly the same way as you. I was like, what the hell's wrong with them? Why, Sony's so good at deflecting attention. Why can't they do that? Like, I think, and this is just my thought on it. I think we found out why, right? In the lawsuit, in the back and forth, we saw the whole court case, and they're going back and forth. Within Microsoft, Xbox has to fight for their lunch. They have to justify every purchase they make. So even if they're failing, they can't just go ask Big Daddy for more money. They have to justify it. That's why they probably weren't able to get that extra funds for those last year, right? It's just really weird that's how they play the game. I've always found that super interesting, why they wouldn't give them the money to shore up the business, but it seems like that's probably the reason why.
Yeah.
Well,
look,
to be honest, too.
Blue, you're right.
I'm sorry, Blue, go ahead.
No, just to respond to your point too. Like, I mean, let's be honest too, right? They're the third place market leader, as they like to point out during the case, right? And so, Sony's very good at going out and purchasing those, limited exclusivity deals because they are by far right ahead of everyone else. So people are more willing to listen to that. But if Xbox comes in and asks, it's limited exposure for their game, and it cuts it off from the mega platforms. Plus, obviously, it creates some diversity in the conversations between Xbox fans or PlayStation fans, right? When it's being given that exclusivity one place or the other. And it just, when that exclusivity is over and it goes to the other platform, it loses a lot of oomph anyway, I think.
That's a great point.
To your point, very valid point. Go ahead.
I just want to say that, they did offer $300 million for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. It obviously wasn't taken up. They offered $250 million for Suicide Squad. I know it's not out yet. $100 million for Assassin's Creed Mirage. So they are trying to do deals in the background, but it does seem that there are a few companies out there that are reluctant to take those deals on.
Yeah, I mean, to those point of that, I don't think they were offering that though. They were calculating how much it would cost to get them. I think that's what that was.
Yeah. I think,
and I think to Blue's point, the idea that if Microsoft goes to ask for a deal, it always ends up probably being more expensive than if Sony asks for a deal, because the pool is just bigger at Sony's in Sony's water than Microsoft. So that also could potentially ruin them getting certain things, right?
Yeah, and the deal's different. When Microsoft knocks on the door, the deal's usually probably going to have a discussion about Game Pass within it, Whereas when Sony knocks on the door, it's probably going to have a discussion about marketing and console exclusivity.
It'll have Game Pass in there too. Just make sure you don't put it in there.
yeah. I mean, they're different discussions. I mean, with different companies, with different market leads, and obviously different ways. But Salty, I did want to get your view on, like, how did you feel about, as a PlayStation sort of side or a PlayStation fan, how did you feel about Phil's letter? Did you feel like that was, responsible, good leadership? Because I personally did.
No, I think that it definitely is, because he admitted what was going on, like that's the biggest thing, because I think during that time, there's a lot of like passing the buck off and people not, just trying to like compute what's actually going on. But like to come out and say it's not acceptable is great, because it'd be even worse if he didn't say anything and like that was part and parcel, like, hey, this is acceptable in our company, or this is what we're going to expect in the future. It's like, hey, this is what we know needs to happen. If we're not hitting those metrics or we're not getting games out at a certain clip, it is not acceptable. Like that's the biggest thing, because it's like you can't go within that span of not releasing games and it be okay for your fan base. So I think that bodes well in the future, whatever you guys want, because it is difficult. I think that it's with the subscription service, whatever they said before or after, it's just these big third parties don't want to invest day and date with their product because it just tanks sales, so that's the problem they're running in. Is like PlayStation, if they want to offer an exclusivity deal, they're still going to make profit on how much they sell, right? It's not hey, come put it in our subscription service. That's the difference.
Mhm.
So it's an uphill battle, but I think that's why they're trying to acquire all this talent. I've said this before. It's like Netflix. Netflix had the the Marvel characters like Daredevil and all those other ones, but they didn't own them. So eventually they had to pay the piper and say, hey, we can't even have this content in our service anymore because we don't own the actual product. So Microsoft is trying to tackle that by acquiring talent, acquiring developers that they would control. So that's the biggest thing, because like the third party perspective, it is difficult to fill in the gaps with third party releases when they won't commit because of the sales. So that's the problem they're going into. So hopefully with the acquisition of, the companies that they did acquire, they can fill in those gaps, but that's still up to we'll see what happens, like with releases and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, again, as I'll say, first party has proven itself in many times that the original first party that Microsoft had coming into the generation, I would say, but the management of all these studios that they've acquired, there's obviously been teething problems, and that's yet to be proven. But I think the management has the skills. I think they've now got the talent, they've got the money. There's no reason for them to not succeed this generation. And as you earlier said, they've really got an opportunity. And I know they've said publicly, but I don't believe it. They've really got an opportunity to put their foot on the neck of Sony, and that's what, if I was in that company, I would be having those. I definitely wouldn't be emailing that shit, not now. But I would be having those conversations like, well, we need to go and step on these guys' necks right now because we've got an opportunity to do so and pull back some of this market share. And I think it's possible. It sort of remains to be seen. But guys, we do have a whole bunch of other topics to go through, but unfortunately we pretty much run out of time. It always happens with us. There's so much to talk about, but just not enough time. I do have a couple of super chats I want to get to, and Salty, this is a trigger warning for you. James Thomas. James Thomas with the $2 super chat says, PlayStation has gotten by on cross-gen games this whole gen. Yeah, salty, but true. Ish, had a couple. James Thomas with the $2 super chat. He says, PlayStation roadmap is non-existent, just Spider-Man 2 and Wolverine. That's true, and that's a problem, and even Salty pointed to that. It's like, what do we have coming? Yeah, when you talk about first party, I've seen, they've got third party deals happening, but if you're talking about 2024 and 2023 as a whole, I can't see much for 2024 at the moment, and I would be concerned if I was, I didn't have both systems, when I was a PlayStation fan. That would worry me, just as a consumer. So I think PlayStation needs to pull its finger out of its ass. Trying to find another word, but that's the only word for it. Finger out of its ass and get to the fans the information that they want, which is games. Helldivers look pretty damn good.
Bottom. You could have said bottom. But,
I was leading towards butthole, but
bum.
Yeah. I didn't want to. I don't know. Butthole just didn't sound right, but I've said it twice now. Whatever. Doovie with the $2 super chat. He says, "Get those likes in. Absolutely. Subscribe if you're new. Hit that like button if you're new or you're not new. We appreciate all the support. The chat. You guys have been absolutely amazing. I am at work this week, so it's been a struggle for me to get things. Your chats up on screen, which I do like to do, but unfortunately, I've got a bit of a weird setup when I'm at work, so I do apologize for that. To the guests, Salty, you've been absolutely amazing. Appreciate you coming on the show in the Lion's Den, as you called it. And look, I mean, I know a lot of people see your Twitter and they think that you're, I know that that's all fun. I sort of came to understand through mutual understanding that we like to wind up the communities, but when it comes to real talk, we have real talk.
For sure.
So I appreciate
man, for sure.
I appreciate you coming through, man, and giving us your takes and spending some time here. And look, if you want to find Salty and jump over his podcast, I do recommend. I'm over there usually every week, winding up the chat.
Stirring the pot, baby.
Stirring the pot, yeah, that's what I do. His links are all down below in the description, but Salty, let people know where they can find you, what you're up to, and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, just not a lot of content on the channel. We're just doing the live show on Thursdays, so that's 6:30 Pacific, 9:30 Eastern. I used to do videos and stuff like that, but life's just crazy right now. So hit me up on Twitter, saltiest_gaming. Again, man, it's all about memes and stuff like that. So I think I unblocked everybody on my list, man. I'm taking Elon. I think Elon's gonna, try to do that anyway. So I'm like, I'm just gonna block everybody. It's cool. So anyway, it was a pleasure being here, man. Love with these conversations, it's great to have, because I know when I've had Xbox people on the podcast, it just kind of expands the conversation, because if you have people with similar thoughts and thought processes, it kind of goes down one road. But when you put different people in the mix, it branches, and it's very entertaining. And I think that it just benefits everybody, the people having the conversations, people in the chat. So, it's fun to do. So thanks for having me on. I'm going to go tend to my dogs. Got to go take them out and stuff like that. But thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming through. Kay, absolute blast to have you back, man. You always have very well thought out, very well considered thoughts. And you've turned me around on a couple of things, which is hard to do because I'm stubborn like a mule. So I always appreciate having a chat with you, whether it be it in an Xbox party or on a show, man. So thanks for coming back through. Let people know where they can find you. You can find Kay in the description down below with the Gaming Circle podcast. And how's your show looking this week? And what are you looking forward to playing?
Oh, well, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for having me on. You know me, I enjoy having that conversation. I enjoy the debate. We keep it above board. We don't have to agree on everything, but, as you saw, and shout out to Salty, above board, nothing ridiculous. We had a great conversation. So salute to you for adding me to this great conversation. I really appreciate it. As far as the show is going to be concerned, this weekend we're gonna get salty as we do. We're gonna get a little messy on a Saturday morning as we always do. But we keep it PG-13, or we try to, unless we get some guests who just can't help themselves. It is what it is. But no, TKO Asante on Xbox, PlayStation, X.com, and all those places you want to find me. And the Gaming Circle podcast this Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US. As for games I'm excited about, believe it or not, I've been a bit of a grazer. So even though I have 4 days in Starfield right now, and I think I'm about 75% of the way done with the story. I've come to the realization that Starfield is a game I'm going to be playing for a long time. So I'm adding new games into the mix. Started the new Mortal Kombat. Love the new Mortal Kombat. I'm really, really loving the new Mortal Kombat. Been playing party animals with my kids, and believe it or not, those who are talking smack about that game is Fall Guys energy. It's coming for you. It's amazing. I can't wait. And believe it or not, I'm also waiting for Mario Wonder to come and stomp Sonic and everybody else. We have a bet going, so it's gonna be amazing. I can't wait to play that as well. So just enjoying my time with all these little different games, and then when I have no choice, I go back into Starfield for another 50 years. So it is what it is. Thank you guys so much for having me.
You say 4 days, Kay?
I'm 4 days into Starfield. Yeah.
Rookie numbers, my friend.
I know. Some of us have to work for a living. Hey, I did 2 days. I did 2 days straight in that game, just straight. I slept and it would be next to me. I'd wake up and I'd continue playing it. I did 2 days straight in that game, but to the point where my wife was like, "Do you have a problem? Do we need to have a conversation?"
Starfield does that to you, man. Look, ladies first this week. Blue, another fantastic show. It's great having you on the show and getting your opinions and your takes, and you do have other tastes in games that I like that are counter to mine. And so I always love to hear about those as well. And often counter opinions too. I don't know how I feel about that, but it's fantastic. It's fantastic having you here every week. Let people know where they can find you, what you'd be up to, how your week's looking.
Yeah. I'm going to go back to Starfield because I feel like I'm going to be playing that, like Kay said, for a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And then I'll play Party Animals and get mad at everybody that I'm playing with when they beat me up. and thanks for being on, Kay. And it was good to have Salty. He was very well. It was really good conversation, and appreciate his perspective on everything. And it's good. It's good. Thanks for being here, Kay.
Absolutely. If you want to find Blue, she's down in the description. You can find her on Twitter. I highly recommend following her. She has a great sense of humor. Infinite, another fantastic week. Let people know where they can find you, what you'd be up to, how the fix is looking. But
Baby, come back.
yeah.
You can
Oh,
have.
Lord.
They kind of full dancing.
I was around. thanks to Holly for that, because she's put that on my brain for the better part of the week. I've been singing that song now. Thanks to
It's
her.
so good.
Yeah.
So close to the
I
mute.
bet
I was just about to press a button and he stopped.
Well, we know you don't
This is
like
why I'm here.
good music, so I get it. Risk. No, man.
Peter,
good show.
I think you and I should also sing too, and so we can all be singing against.
No.
Let's do this. Yes, all of us. Let's go. No, good
Come on,
show.
Pete, you started.
Are we
Oh
a
no,
guest?
no one
Are we
wants to
missing
hear
a guest?
that. Yeah, he left already, bro.
Yeah, you
Oh.
did.
Dogs, man.
Well, that saves me
Dogs.
time. Thank you for coming by, Asante, and being here with us, brother. Very much appreciated having you on. Anyway, this is a good show. I'm so glad that we had your expertise here to counter any detractors. And yeah, thank you all, of course, in the chat for being here with us tonight. Of course, the fix. You all need to come by and support it, brother. You have me there Thursday night at 8:00 p.m. You'll hear Blue there clacking on the keyboard very hard as she types very fast. But yes, come by and support her, brother. Of course, you'll find me on Tuesdays as well on Boom's Xbox Factor at 12 o'clock Eastern, and here at home, the home base at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 on Fridays. So yeah, and Twitter, of course, Infinite Umbra or Umbra Infinite. You'll find me either way. As far as gaming, I'm 260 plus hours into Starfield. That's 10 days, 21 hours last I looked. Yes. Loving
How
it.
many
You're
kids
a
you
bad
have?
man.
You have a a wife?
I have no
How many kids
kids.
and a wife?
I'm
thank you.
single.
I got
and
two
ready
of
to
them.
mingle.
So there you go.
I get it. I give you a little leeway. You know, I'm sure the missus is like, "What are you doing over there? Come and watch Law and Order with me or something." I don't know what y'all watch, but yeah, no, I get it, Kay, I get it. But you know, yeah, loving it, man. I've been playing Party Animals
Yes,
with the gang and drop kicking Pete, you know, into oblivion. So it's I got you, Blue. You join in with us next time. I'll defend you, okay? So don't worry about it. We'll
Pete,
double
you're going
team it.
down.
That's right.
Damn, hanging up on me.
But yeah, other than that, it's been a good game. Man, if you all are anybody who's here and you don't have us on, you know, Xbox and such, jump in sometime and play some animal. I almost said gang beats. Play some Party Animals with us and enjoy that as well. But yeah, man, good show.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for coming through. And that is IGN, the fix, and I'll link that in the. Oh, hang on a minute. My bad. Pete. No one gets my jokes though. Pete, another fantastic week. Let people know where they can find you, what you be up to, what you be playing, and we'll get out of here.
At JediKnightPeter everywhere. I'm playing Starfield for the foreseeable future, but I just looked at the games coming out, and we've got Cyberpunk, we've got Assassin's Creed Mirage, we've got Lords of the Fallen, we've got Forza Motorsport, we've got Alan Wake 2, so it's way too much to play, and can't wait to get back into Party Animals. I just love playing with friends. I have a massive laugh when I play that game. Had a great time playing with Holly and just kick her butt. Had a great time playing with Umbra,
He's a
getting my
liar.
butt kicked. So yeah, it's a good fun all around.
Absolutely,
Thanks,
yeah.
Chat.
And if you want to find anyone from any of our shows, you can just head down in the description, click the links. It'll take you to where you need to go. And we got to get out of here. Have a great week, everyone. And I'm going to kick everyone in the chat over to Mav. So don't forget to hit the button, slip over there, and show him some love as well. See y'all next
And
week.
don't forget, guys. Don't forget.
Bye.
Baby, come back.
Oh, shit.
You can blame it all on Riskit.